Apologies on the delay, ladies and gentlemen. Madam Mayor, CEO, councillors, esteemed ladies and gentlemen. If you're happy for me to count us in to go live. In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, we are live.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Latrobe City Council's monthly council meeting. Tonight's meeting will be held with our councillors and guests joining, some which are in person, others will be joining us virtually. You'll be able to see them on the screen as we proceed through this evening's meeting. I would like to welcome our Deputy Mayor, Councillor Dan Clancy, Councillors Gibson, Harriman, Howe, Law, Lund and Middlemiss are here with us in the chamber tonight. Councillor Ferguson is hoping to join us virtually if possible, but in the event that she's not able to join us during the proceedings, then we will record an apology on her behalf. We've got a pretty full house in the gallery this evening. For those joining us virtually, you won't necessarily be able to see the gallery. You'll be looking into the chamber itself, but we have a sizable crowd with us this evening. We have a number of speakers that will also be addressing the meeting this evening as well. In advance of all of those things, I'd also like to introduce our CEO, Steve Piacenti, who is with us and will be assisting as we progress our way through the meeting this evening, and also in the event of questions, we'll delegate those to officers as deemed appropriate. A few other points of recognition as we move through. Kendria Pope is one of our executive managers who's been with us for a period of time in recent years and has been a significant asset to us, particularly during periods of some community consultation, but also during COVID. Kendria was one of our exec managers looking after governance, our council planning processes, our Commonwealth Games requirements, but a broad range of support in our exec offices as well, and Kendria will be finishing up with us this week. So we'd like to thank Kendria for her work and contribution to our local community and our activities. Also like to welcome Zeta from the LV Express, new journo on our patch who's joining us for our first council meeting. Welcome Zeta, good to have you with us, and looks like it's going to be a rather large meeting for you to cover first up. But good to see you and a pleasure to have you here. We look forward to working with you. As with all of these things, we'll work through the agenda as presented, and first up, we'll just move on to the acknowledgements and the prayer. I would like to acknowledge that we are meeting here today on the traditional lands of the Brackalung people of the Gunai-Kurnai Nation, and I pay my respects to the elders past, present, and those emerging. If there are elders who are with us this evening, I would also like to acknowledge them. We acknowledge our First Nations people as having a rich and enduring culture and a strong connection to the land, to the water and to the sky. Now on to the prayer. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For the kingdom, the power and the glory are also. The gallery are reminded that while it may be tempting, given your proximity to the discussions tonight, you cannot engage in the meeting or with the councillors during the meeting. Any disruptions will result in individuals being asked to leave. There are speakers in relation to this meeting tonight. Those are individuals who've registered to speak in accordance with our governance rules, and they will also have the opportunity to take questions from the councillors once they have spoken. We also afford the opportunity for public questions at each of our meetings, and these have been received in advance of the meeting and are attended to by the CEO. During the meeting, councillors may ask questions to ensure clarification on a range of matters. These are questions that relate to new or unclear information, and they are answered either by our CEO or officers under delegation. This doesn't reflect any deficit in relation to the officer's report, but just that there may be new or additional information that wasn't available to the councillors in advance of the meeting. Given there are a number of people here, those of you that are joining us in the chamber this evening, if you require any assistance at any point in time, our governance team are near the door where you came in, and they will be happy to assist you at any point at all. Councillors, moving on to item 3, I don't have any Formal apologies. I will note that Councillor Ferguson may join us, but in the event that she doesn't get to us this evening, we will record that formal apology, but we will hold that in abeyance pending further clarification in relation to that. And there are no requests for leave of absence that are being tabled at this meeting. I don't think there's anything further in relation to that, which brings us into item 4 of the agenda, the adoption of the minutes, commencing on page 4 of tonight's agenda. I note you, Councillor Gibson, moving.
Yes, please.
Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Middlemiss. Do I have any opposition, councillors? Take it that no one wishes to speak. Just a record of the previous meeting. Consider those carried unanimously. Councillors, moving on to item 5 of the agenda, declarations of interest. Councillors, do you have any declarations of conflict regarding matters being heard in tonight's agenda? Councillor Clancy?
Madam Mayor, I have a conflict of interest at item 9.2, as discussed in our agenda review last week. It is mentioning a business awards program that I've previously done some work for, not currently, but have done in the past few years. So I'll declare a conflict of interest and step out of the room on that decision.
Can proceed, she says with the microphone off, not particularly helpful. Item 6 is public participation. This is where we move on to tonight's agenda, where we hear public questions and also our public speakers. Members of the public do have the opportunity to present questions to us. They need to be lodged with the office of the CEO by 12 noon on the Friday prior to the council meeting. I'm not aware of any public questions at this point, Mr. CEO.
No, none received, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Okay, we then move on to our public speakers. And members of the public who are registered prior to 12 noon today are given the opportunity to speak on items that are listed in our agenda. You have up to 3 minutes. Speakers are requested to keep their address brief and to the main issues of concern, and councillors may ask you questions to clarify points. They are not points of debate, and councillors can't make commentary on any matters raised by speakers, so please don't feel that they're not engaging with you. It just is outside the bounds of our governance rules. And a reminder to all of the speakers that this is a live stream meeting, so we will be capturing your voice and image, and it will be kept on the nature of the presentation. We have a number of speakers tonight. We do have one speaker who has withdrawn, but we have speakers on items 7.1, 8.2, 8.3 and 11.2. Some who are joining us in person, others who are joining us virtually. The first of our speakers, and if you're in attendance, if you can come up to the lectern. For those who are joining us online, there'll be a slight delay as we get them in onto the screens for you to be able to see. Our first speaker, who is in person with us this evening, is Lynn Matthews, the Secretary and Treasurer of the Traralgon Men's Shed, who is speaking on item 7.1, the Traralgon Flood Recovery Project funding. As Lynn makes her way up to the lectern, Lynn, just wanted to acknowledge there was a letter that was forwarded through. We did make copies and make that available to the councillors, just for your reference. Over to you.
Thank you. I don't know what the protocol is, but Madam Mayor, councillors, staff and the general public. I'm not very good at this public talking, so I'm sorry. In the item of the minutes, it indicates that Traralgon Men's Shed in the Model Makers area was not impacted by the floods, or has no major impact event of it. I want to say that we have got major impact. We have continued to work through the issues we've got down there. We had over $120,000 worth of damage done during the flood. We tried to find another location, and the council was unable to help us with a location to find us. We couldn't go to the commercial area because we couldn't pay for commercial rent, because we don't have any funds. We don't have any government regular income. We no longer have flood insurance. So if another flood comes through, which is quite possible, seeing all the number of floods that the East Coast has actually sustained in the last 6 months, it's a high probability that another flood will happen in Traralgon. And if it does, the shed will actually go under again.
Lynn, are you able to just talk into the microphone for us? We're having an indication that people might not be able to hear. If you can try.
Is it on?
Is that, just going to check. Hannah, I'm just going to get you to assist Lynn in relation to that. That's all right, I'll add to the end of it.
I'm just going to go to this. Okay. Like I said, we don't have any flood insurance anymore. So if another flood goes through and we sustain another $120,000 worth of damage again, we will go under. We operate 3 days a week, and we have between 15 and 20 people turn up at any given day, and they're there for about 8 hours a day. And we actually will put in about $1 million into the community by what we actually do. The council did try to find us an actual property and did say they were going to actually help us with rent if we actually found one, but we weren't able to find another one. So we've actually stayed in the building where we are, and it's under duress that we're actually there. We've actually we've put an awful lot of our own money into repairing the actual building, taking out the actual plaster and the insulation on the walls, and we've replaced those. We've painted them again. We've set ourselves back up. We've actually had carpet put down, but a second-hand carpet, and other rooms are actually still got no carpet. We've got an actual room that was our lounge room and our meeting room, which is now no longer used for that because it still leaks. We've been waiting 4 months to actually find a plumber to actually do the work. Been a shortage of materials, and he hasn't been able to turn up. So we're waiting for the plumber to turn up to actually fix that. We've been able to go for a grant of $80,000, and we were successful with that. If we don't actually find another shed to go to in the next 6 months, we've got a chance of losing that $80,000. And on top of that $80,000, we've actually put in $40,000 of our own money, so that's $120,000 that we will put in to actually relocating to another location. That includes the disassembling and reassembling of the dust extraction system, the solar system, and the security system. And we've got to remove and relocate all our machinery, timber, equipment, incidental items, the office, the kitchen, and set up all the storage all over again. That's a huge endeavour. We'll actually lose any time we were actually closed down. We're not actually making anything. We're actually not getting an income as well. After the actual flood, we lost 3 months of not being able to have income coming in. We've had a model making area which is no longer being utilised because we actually haven't got room for it at the moment, and we haven't bought tables, etc., because we've still got a chance of not being able to operate again.
Lynn, have you got much more to go?
Not much.
Have you got much more to go?
I just want to make sure that people know that we're actually...
I'll just extend you by another 3 minutes there, Lynn.
Okay. The Traralgon Agriculture Society actually owned the property. They did not have flood insurance and have not helped us with any of the actual work. We had to do our own, pay for all the electrical wiring and all the new power points and everything else ourselves out of our own money as well. So we've been carrying it all. So we are actually not there for any real reason other than we need to keep operating in the meantime. But we do want to, we've given an actual drawing of the location where we would like to be, which is near the croquet club. And the benefits of being there would be reduced costs of putting in all the infrastructure. And we believe we can actually be in the shed for a lot less than the council is actually allowing for in their budgeting proposals. I'll leave it at that. That you have got some more paperwork and stuff there that you can read.
Great, thanks very much, Lynn. Stay there with us. I'm just going to give councillors the opportunity to ask any questions. Councillor Middlemess.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Ms Matthews, you said you worked, the shed operated 3 days a week. Which days are they?
Tuesday, Wednesdays and Thursdays.
So it's midweek?
Midweek, yes.
Okay. Can I ask you, if you had the ideal shed, you didn't have the damaged one, all these problems, do you think you would be operating for a longer period, more days?
We're open to actually operating. It depends on our membership, having people available to actually open up and close. Because everyone's a volunteer, there's no actual labour, paid labour.
So you could go to 5 days a week?
We could go 5 days a week, and we actually do run ladies' classes on certain nights during the year, depending on manpower.
Can I also ask you, you made reference there to your proposal up near the Croquet Club. You believe it could come in cheaper than the council officer's estimate.
Yes.
Could you give us an indication of the difference between the council estimate and your estimate?
Well, council's estimating about $2 million to actually go and finish their proposal.
Yep.
I think we can do it for less than $1 million.
Okay. Thanks very much.
Councillors, got the opportunity for more questions. On this side, Councillor Gibson, I think that was a nod of a head.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Excuse me. Thank you, Lynn. A couple of questions, please. With what goes down at the men's shed, what does it do for, now I won't call them clients, or the people working there? How does it change them?
Change them, gives them a reason to get up in the morning. It actually gives them purpose in life. They contribute to the actual community, and by doing so, it helps them feel better in themselves. It saves lives because people who have attended have said that they would have committed suicide if they hadn't had something to actually fill in their days and time.
Yeah. Sadly, I'm not surprised. All right. You said about the income. So how do you gain the income? It is by is it by orders, or you make something and people come? How do you make your income, please?
We actually make items to order, but
Yep.
we also, I've sourced grants to actually make things. Like we had over $40,000. We made benches and picnic tables for the bushfire allocated people, affected people of East Gippsland, Sarsfield, Clifton Creek and Malakuta. We sent 4 truckloads of benches and picnic tables up to those communities to help them rebuild.
Sorry, I'll come a bit closer. Sorry. Last one. Okay, with the grant that you actually have, is that better? Better? Right. Okay, so that's a grant with state or federal?
It can be either. Depends on where I've actually gone for the money.
Oh, sorry. The successful one that you've already got, the 80,000, was that state or federal? Do you remember? If you don't, that's okay.
I don't remember. I just know what it was called. Kelly helped me with that one from DHS. And so, what does DHS?
State.
State.
No worries.
State funding.
And I'm just thinking off the top of my head, so I may or may not be right here. Is there any way that, depending what goes down, we can help that you won't lose it?
Yes, what we need now is actually written confirmation from the council and allocation of the land, and support that we're going to go ahead with actual drawings, so we can actually make do other submissions to actually get more money from other locations to help with it.
No worries.
So we're helping the council by putting in our own effort to do it, which none of the other groups are actually doing that I'm aware of.
No worries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gibson. Councillors, any further questions? No? Good? No? Lynn, thank you so much for your time. Thanks for coming on and speaking to us tonight. And as you mentioned, councillors have a copy of the completeness of your presentation as well. So thank you so much for providing that to us. Councillors, 8.2 first speaker is a scratching. 8.2 second speaker, this is development of land with 11 dwellings at 1 Meredith Street, Traralgon. Dean Gowing. Hi Dean, good to see you. 3 minutes, we'll ask you questions and we can potentially extend now that I've set the precedent for that.
Thanks. So I was just going to speak just regarding the 11 dwellings on the land next to our house. We've actually put in a few sort of rebuttals against the planning of that 11 dwellings, which originally years ago was 13. Doesn't get much better at 11. The main impact is on traffic through the area. Study was last done in 2013. It is nowhere near accurate as to the actual amount of traffic, especially after the VRI hall and the extra cars through there that keep coming through. They come through Coates and then Meredith Street. So there needs to be some sort of a new gauge on that. The actual access to where these dwellings are going to be is right next to our house. The plans show that part of the driveway that's supposed to be 3 metres wide will cut into our driveway as well, and across a Telstra pit, which is yet to be given permission. So there's quite a few issues with the go-ahead for this permit that I believe is really not great. We're also looking at the fact that in the area that we have our house, along with many other people in the area, it's rather a unique position within Traralgon, right behind the train station. To have these brand new dwellings are quite small. We're looking at getting people in there that are going to be cramped and not stay very long, so it'll be a lot of in and out, mostly renters, I'm guessing. That will be high turnover, possibly not really the greatest aspects that we could sort of get through that area, considering it's so quiet at the moment. And there's a few impacts that have been noted that we've had rebuttals against, but some of the drainage and things like that, our road, when it does hit hard, the rain hits hard, it floods very quick. And if that drainage doesn't go straight out to the creek as it's intended to be, and there's no plans for that, it's going to flood that road very badly with all the concrete and other parts that's going to sort of come down the driveway. The garbage collection is also an issue there. I can't see how that's going to be worked out, to be honest. It's a very, very small road. A great big garbage truck coming in there is just not gonna work. If there was another way in, it might help, but at this current stage, it's a very small amount of room and really doesn't have the access to those areas for 11 dwellings. If it was less, maybe, but 11 is too much. Thanks. Oh, right on.
Thanks very much, Dean. And Dean, I'm going to phrase this in a very careful way for your own privacy as to not what numbers in the house, in the street do you live in, sort of thing. But I am interested in, we had a look at this driveway and the access to the driveway, and I'm a bit interested in that because the plans that we looked in, and certainly with the planners that we spoke to, talked about that it's a 6.1 wide access point that will be wider going into the nature strip. Can you just, I suppose my question is, when you say it's going to go across your driveway, can you just explain that without giving away your exact address for the community?
Not fast. So the actual driveway that's been presented, or shown on the plan, there's already one there that's like the standard size sort of thing. And even in the plan, it shows it has to cut across the small nature strip that's between our house and that one, which includes the Telstra pit. It has to come across. So if it's coming across the Telstra pit, it's going to come across and into ours. That's without a doubt. I'd also say the other side, the actual nature strip on the other side also has a fire plug. So it'd be very interesting to see what's been done there, because there's no mention of that anywhere that I can see. So I'm not sure because if that's going to be 6 metres, yeah, I don't know what's going on there.
And just one more question, I'd be very interested in the fire plug now. One other question I've got for you, which is I suppose not necessarily related to this development, but the traffic within Coates and Meredith is a problem without this development. We can see that.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts on making that a one-way street?
Wouldn't be a bad idea, actually, to be honest. That's the traffic coming through is usually one direction, so it's not a bad idea at all. The parking on that street, because there's a lot of houses there that have a one-car garage, every house has at least 2 cars, including some units that don't have any driveways. So they park out on the street as well. It sort of reminds me of where I'm currently living in Melbourne, where it's just cramped, very small street, nowhere to go. I've had to actually report to the council quite a few times where cars are parked dead opposite one another constantly, and you can't get up and down. And I remember a while back needing an ambulance from our house, and that ambulance struggled to get through that place. And with the amount of cars and stuff coming through and some of the sizes that were being talked about, the average car size and things like that with the driveways and all that of the dwellings even, don't make sense. 4.9 metres is not the average car size. It's close to 5.3. So I'm a little bit concerned about, some actual sizing that's been, or measurements that's actually happened, because, I don't know, my measurements might be a bit off, but doesn't seem quite right.
Thanks for that. I know that we're not making a decision on that
No,
tonight
it's
about
okay.
one-way streets, but I just wanted to
Yep.
get some context for that.
It's a
so
good idea.
appreciate. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for speaking to us. So if it was a one-way street, would that change your opinion at all?
I don't think not with the amount of dwellings, because it's still a lot of traffic. Then you'll get more traffic up Queen's Parade. Again, it's another parking issue there. There's great car parks there that's been sort of put out there, and everyone parks on the street. No one ever does anything about it. It's constant. Like, you can go there right now, there'll be probably 60, 70 cars up Queen's Parade right now. But because the officers don't actually work at this time, they'll just sit there on both sides of the road too. When it comes round, when they do come round, they can't go through, because the end of Queen's Parade is a dead end or straight to the creek, so won't be driving down there. So you do have to turn right onto Coates or do a U-turn. Majority of the time, most people go right, turn down Coates, turn down. So there's a lot of children and stuff that live on that street even now. I don't think the number of visitors that are going to start to come for all those 11 dwellings, that's not going to help a lot with that. I don't believe, no.
In other councils, shires, cities, they actually allow you to have an indentation into the nature strip so you can actually park more off the road. Do you believe that would actually help the problem?
It would. The only issue, like I'm for that, Coates Street only has a footpath, and that's it. And that's only on one side. The other side doesn't have anything, so there's nowhere to go in. The nature strip in front of our house actually has gas pipes running through it, so I don't think that's a good idea either. and the telephone line, so yeah, probably not. It would be a good idea, but I think you'll be going about that much.
No worries.
Yep.
Thank you.
No worries.
Thanks, Councillor Gibson. Councillors, any further questions? Councillor Harriman.
Sorry, Mr. Gowing, just wondering, like, I remember when this came up a number of years ago, Madam Mayor, I think, and it was 13 houses, we're down to 11.
Yep.
What number do you think's the right number on there?
Considering the size and what's actually the area, the amount of traffic, etc., if we're looking somewhere around 8, that's much more reasonable, I believe. They'll also be of a size that's actually going to be allowing people to live there, because that's one of the other issues as well. I've looked at the plans, for instance, and there's like a 1-car garage. Most people have 2 cars, so where that second car is going to be, I really don't know. And that's one of those big issues. And as I said before, some of the sizing of the off-street car parking would not suit the average car. It's too small, so that has not been taken into account properly.
No, thank you very much. Thanks.
Councillors, any further questions? No, Mr. Gowan, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time. Now moving on to 8.3, councillors. This is the use and development of land with a dwelling at Jumbuck Road, Yanal South. Kevin Perry. Kevin is speaking on behalf of Kevin and Sarah. Perry, is Mr. Perry with us this evening? Welcome, Mr Perry. Good to have you with us.
Yeah, thank you very much for hearing us. And,
No worries. Take your time.
Yep, I'll try not to take too long. I've got a bit of stuff written down here, but I've cut it as short as I can. So, practical use for this land, 52 acres, zone farm, to run cows and calves. Same as every other block, requires a farmhouse to be viable, or more viable, dollar signs. Supervision of cattle to ensure cows getting calf, which we had an issue with this year, cost us $25,000 through not getting in calf. So, yeah, so to make sure that cows calve without having trouble, and the calves are being fed, not abandoned, or attacked by foxes, dogs, snakes, thieves or eagles or anything else. So, caretaker's house required, I would say. That's what we look forward to anyway. Home to Rare Kevin and Sarah's kids, young Charlie, my grandson, here I am getting emotional, a very busy 3.5-year-old who needs a home to have memories, to grow up doing things and learn things that farm kids learn. Very, very proud grandfather. A fair and reasonable request. No supervision on farm for cattle without farmhouse, and I think that's a pretty fair statement. Homeless without a place to live. Living at mum and dad's place, which I can vouch for that because I'm dad. Both Kevin and Sarah are both very good people, pay their bills, including their rates, like all the rest of us. They both work very long hours, sometimes leaving for work, checking the cows at 4 a.m. in the morning, travelling to work to pay for this land. Have been for years. Young Kev worked on the land. I started him out in the cow shed in a pram. He's still doing it. Done nothing else ever since. So 14 farms of other people's he's worked on. So he's pretty dedicated. Putting every bit of energy to exhaustion and then coming home sometimes 6, 7, 8 o'clock at night after leaving 4 in the morning. Completely worn out to get up and do it all again the next day. A fair go is all we ask. Please make sure you have all the information. This will make this decision easy. They don't have anywhere else to live of their own without this house. It is doable with this one decision. And in summing up, about the same length again, the Australian dream is to own your own home. We've all got it. To have somewhere to keep your family safe, warm in the winter time, shelter from the rain, somewhere to sleep at night, somewhere to stay cool in the summertime, and be protected from all dangers, to be able to rear your family, or rear our family, and to make their memories be good ones, like everybody should be entitled to do. This would make a great difference to my family. It's what has to happen. It also means Kevin and Sarah and Charlie will have their own farmhouse. As you can tell, I'm pretty passionate. One more family with a house to live in. Let's stop one family from being homeless. Farm blocks are no good without farmhouses, and farm blocks are no good without farm families. And that's about as far as I can cut it down. I think that's about all I've got to say on it for the moment.
Thanks so much, Mr Perry. I'm just going to see if councillors have any questions. Councillor Law?
Yep, thank you, Madam Mayor. Kevin, how long have you lived on the land there at that block?
I have been there since 1968. My father bought that property. We lived up Middle Creek Road when I was 3. He rented houses and he said the next block he buys he's going to own. And in the bloody hills went up both sides like goat country, and we shifted from there in 1967, 68. And I've lived on that 7 acres since we subdivided it back in the, I think it was 76 or 78 or something like that. So, yeah. So I've been there a long time, I'm still there, I'll never move, they'll carry me out in the box. And I presume they'll do the same with the rest of us. Very, very important we get a house in this block. They have nowhere else, no money to pay rent. They don't want to be anywhere else. We do have an issue with no room to expand. We have one 20-acre block across the road, I think it is, not for sale, hasn't been for sale. We bought the block of this same fellow. And if you could buy it, or it did come up for sale, the price would be enormous. And still, 20 acres, you can't put a house on it, obviously. The block across the south side of Pages Road, which is the bottom end of the block, about 400 acres. Those people have been there before I was born, still has not ever come up for sale. If it did, you'd be looking at, who knows, $8 to $10 million to buy it.
Thanks, Mr Perry. Councillors, any
thank you.
further questions? Councillor Gibson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Mr Perry. Couple of, just a clarification. So the block that you were speaking about, is this the block that Mr Perry Senior owns or Junior owns? Which one are we talking about?
Well, I live on the 7 acres right next door to this block.
Yep.
On the very block that my grandmother used to milk cows on. My dad milked cows in. I've milked cows in.
Yep.
My young bloke didn't get a chance because we had to subdivide that place to pay
Mr
for
Perry,
our
I'm just going to need you to answer the question.
Sorry?
Just trying to clarify at this point which block of land we're actually talking
the
about.
7 acres next door
This-
to it.
The 7 acres?
We
Councillor-
owned the farm, the whole farm there before it was subdivided.
That's right.
Yep.
Councillor
No,
Gibson,
so
does that
it's
answer
the
your
small.
question?
Yes.
Yep.
So you don't live on the block that is we're talking about.
No.
It's your son that wants to
That's
build
exactly
it.
right.
Yes, thank
Sorry,
you.
I missed the point there.
Now, a couple of questions, please.
Yep.
Now, what's the cost of a calf?
Well, last season they were bringing, around about 12 months old, they were bringing between $1,800 and $2,100.
Wow.
This year they're $700 less. The price has dropped a bit, but yeah, there was about 14 cows didn't get in calf, so that's
And-
approximately $22,000 loss.
You lost 14 last year.
Yeah.
And
Well,
because,
it's just this, yeah, because they didn't get in calf. It was actually this year. The son said, right, we've got no money to buy them with. Let's dump those cows on the market and sell them.
oh,
Go
no,
on, Bob.
sorry, we're at different,
Oh, yeah, okay.
right. So, by you being...
Question.
Yep. No, I'm getting there.
Yeah.
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 Sorry. Okay. You were talking about losing calves by not being on the land.
Yes.
So that's why I asked the
Yep.
cost of a calf.
Yep.
Okay. So if it's that amount of money, sorry,
Yep.
I'll be more direct.
Yep.
Okay, how many did you lose for not being on the land last season?
I think it was about 15 head that didn't get in calf. And as far as calves go, we're checking them all the time. We have to run up the hill day and night on a motorbike in the cold and check them all the time. But actual cow losses, I couldn't state exactly, but I think there was about 3 cows for a loss of calving, and there was a couple of calves that got dropped on the head. Normally, if you're on the job, you know, we used to have a calving pad outside the bedroom window pretty much, and you could look out the window and you could say that cow's calving and we'd be out there. So we don't have that where we are. If we put the house up on Kev's block, Sarah's going to be there when Kev's not. Kev's going to be there when Sarah's not. So straight away, 24-hour supervision. And I think
No
that's the main
worries.
point. Yeah.
Thank you. And last question is, and I have heard, but I just want to know if it is true, that the cattle wrestling is, I would have known it years ago.
Yep.
Is that on the rise?
Well,
Councillor Gibson, I just want to wait, Mr Perry, relevance to the debate in relation
Because
to
you were
this.
saying that he needs to be there so they're not stolen.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mr
Yeah.
Perry, continue.
Yeah, look, we've been lucky. We haven't had any cows knocked off. There has been different times when we've had cows, people lose cows and that around the area. We've had quite a few motorbike thefts, quite a few machinery thefts and tools and everything else around the area. And there is quite a bit of cattle rustling going on from time to time. I did hear of one bloke lost a couple of semi-loads. Now, I'm not sure where that was, but on the grapevine.
No worries.
So
Thank you.
that is a real thing.
Issue.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Gibson. Councillors, any further questions? Anything further? Thank you so much for your time, Mr.
No
Perry.
worries.
Please
Thanks
take a
very
seat.
much for listening, madam.
Thanks very much. Councillors, also on 8.3, use of development of land with dwelling at Jumbuck Road, Yanar South. Dean Suckling from N Proprietary Limited.
Good evening, councillors. Hate following my clients, they're always far more interesting than I am. But anyway, appreciate the continued review following on from the other week. I'm going to be quick tonight. Hopefully we've provided plenty of information to guide a good decision. And I'm glad we've sorted out the issue of Kevin Perry and Kevin Perry on land, which obviously caused some confusion. So we've got both Kevin Perrys here this evening. We now expect every agricultural application like this to go to councillors or VCAT. That's because councillors represent their community and what's best for that community, far better than guidelines. Each farmer deserves the respect of demonstrating how they are going to contribute to agriculture and their community. Farmers are not the best at it, so I do it for them. Tonight we ask you to assess our application for a family who lives in your community and how it will contribute to your community, not just against the policies. It does meet the planning criteria. It depends on which side of the fence you put yourself. We know this because plenty of these get approved around the state, especially as we trend to smaller farms. Melbourne might not like it, but they don't understand farming anyway. Kevin and Sarah are not out-of-town developers, they're generational farmers, trying to farm and live on their farm and to do the best they can in the area where they grew up. Their young son is already showing deep interest in farming, and that to me is the single most important factor. Kids exposed to farming want to be farmers. And Mr. Perry assures me that he will never leave, ever. Like most farmers, Kevin's hourly pay rate on the farm is 0. 2 to 3 times a year he gets paid when he sells stock, and what's left after the bills is his. Some years that won't be much. He may even have to use farm equity. Other years it's very good. There is no safety net. The harder he works, the more successful he is. That type of pay structure makes farmers diligent and want to be close to their animals and their crop. The justifications for the dwelling provided in the farm plan are straight from farmers and what has caused major issues on their farm. And I could fill 20 pages of what can go wrong. Single moments, wrecking seasons, sometimes viability. The intimate monitoring of living on your farm reduces those risks and improves farming. I speak from heartbreaking experience on that one. I want to provide you a quote from the leader of the AgVic Objector team. We all know farming is better with a house, but we're not supporting them. We all know farming is better with a house, but we're not supporting them. Huh? Interestingly, the future change in bushfire zoning is presented as a reason not to approve. I would argue it's a solid reason to approve. What happens to stock in a bushfire? Abandoned to burn? Callous. But that's not what happens. Farmers will drive towards the fire to save stock. My mate Stewie told me in Ash Wednesday he lost his house and saved his dairy cows, and he's proud of that choice. Am I close? Am I running out of time?
Want to wrap it up? You'll be fine.
Okay, and this site is the buffer for the neighbours in the trees. The better maintained, the safer that neighbourhood. I've been doing this a long time. I've worked with thousands of farms, big and small. and they're all worthy. I commend Mr Raperi for improving our industry. He is exactly the type of person who gives our industry a future, and he is correct. Their farming will be better when he lives there, and the community will also be better for it. Thank you. I wasn't expecting that. Thank you.
Bring some friends with you, Mr Suckling. Councillors, do you have any questions? Councillors, anything? Councillor Harriman, you're first up.
Thanks. A bit of speaking to the microphone, I guess. Thanks, Madam Mayor. Mr Suckling, just a couple of questions. You said it meets the planning criteria. Is that Latrobe's planning criteria or just state planning criteria?
Absolutely. It is not illegal for you guys to approve this property.
Yep.
The criteria is 100 hectares. That is a minimum size where you can have a dwelling without a planning permit. Below that, it then becomes subject to a planning permit, and we come and ask you guys, can we have a planning permit, please?
Right. Okay.
We need to demonstrate that we need it.
Yep.
But that's what we do here.
Yep. Nice.
Sorry.
Couple of
Dale,
questions.
can you just sit tight for a moment?
Yep.
Yeah, I think
That's
Jodie's
enough for you, Mr Suckling. I'll leave you in peace.
I'm out.
No, it's all right. Stay with us, Mr Suckling, just
Sorry.
for a moment. Just need to check on something.
Can I add to that comment?
No, I just want you to wait just for a minute, if you wouldn't mind, Mr Suckling. No, that's what I'm just getting checked. Music wouldn't bother me so much, Councillor Middleman. This is true.
I'm getting on for it too. That's all right. I have that impact.
Just while the Mayor's stepped out, we are just going to adjourn the meeting just for a couple of minutes while we see what's going on outside. So just thought I'd let everyone know. Thanks.
Good evening, everyone. If you just take your seats, please. We're still live, Aldo? Thank you very much. To those of you, thank you so much for your patience. Mr. Suckling, I do apologise. I will be back to you shortly. The basis of these council meetings is that they are here for us to be able to consider the matters on the agenda and those presented to council for decision. In the event that anyone wants to disrupt this meeting, engage with our staff in any way that is unsafe or not kind, I suggest you leave now. One of your colleagues has just been escorted from the building and we won't be letting anyone else in. I also won't have other members of the community threatened in any way by anyone who participates in these meetings. If you are here to hear the conduct of the business and you're genuinely interested in the processes of this council, you are welcome and we're very happy to have you here. But please be aware the tolerance for that kind of behaviour does not exist in this chamber and I won't allow it to continue. Thank you for your patience, everyone. I can assure you that we will continue with this meeting. It will happen without further disruption. So if anyone needs a moment to consider whether they would like to be here, very happy for you to take that time. If not, we're moving on. And any further interruptions, either here or anywhere else in the building, or any concerns for anyone's safety, either coming into this building or leaving it, will be attended to by the police. Thanks. Mr. Suckling, I believe there was a question from Councillor Harriman and I interrupted. You got your answer?
It's raised, sorry, Madam Mayor, it's raised a couple of questions through you to the CEO, if I might.
Please.
So, Mr. Suckling brought up that this one meets the planning criteria, and we've had a bit of an explanation as to under 100 it has to have a planning application, under 100 hectares has to have a planning application but can still be approved. So I just want to get clarity on that, if that's acceptable. And I just noticed the other one is item 3, we've got it in the refusal that the owner of both properties is the same. And I think we've had it clarified that that's not true.
Councillor Harriman, can I just get that? It's important that we make clear, through you, Mr. CEO, a question potentially for our officers. I'm not sure that he's back up here yet. You might have to answer it. Sorry, we've got a few people still downstairs on the door.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. So, in relation to the second question, I think there was in the report you previously received an assumption that the two owners were had the same name and they were the same people, but it turns out that they weren't. They actually had the same, I think, two first names, or certainly initials, so that assumption was incorrect from officers. In relation to the first question, going back to that in terms of the as of right requirements, I can't remember the exact figure. I think it was quoted there before, 100. I thought it was, is it hectares or acres?
100 hectares.
It is 100 hectares, yep, there you go. I've lost mine. Yep. That's a planning permit isn't required for a dwelling. It's an as of right in that particular zone. So below that, there's a requirement to obtain a permit, which is the process that's been enacted here. And as I've finished answering those questions, the General Manager of Planning walks back. I think we've clarified that.
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Reardon assists us with any number of things, and skills come in handy across a number of fronts. The question was just being put around the clarification of the land ownership around Jumbuck Road, but I think we've got to the point of clarification. Thank you for that, and thank you for your assistance earlier. Any further questions, councillors? Anything further? Thank you, Mr. Suckling. Thank you so much for your time and your patience in relation to that. Okay, we have one more speaker this evening. Ladies and gentlemen, councillors, this relates to 11.2, review of dog attack processes. We have someone joining us online. Michelle Slater will be coming in to speak to us. We'll just enable that to occur. You will see Michelle then on the screen. And Michelle, welcome. Just going to wait till you connect in, no rush there. These things take a bit of time. Audio is now in. Yes, and just with a point of clarification for my colleagues, Michelle, we wished you well toward the end of last year as one of my colleagues just asked, is this the same Michelle? Yes, it's the same Michelle. Lovely to see you once again. You have 3 minutes with which to present to council, but given the nature of the way things have been, going along tonight. Precedent has been set, so at that point, if there's further that you have, I will extend you beyond that so you're able to present to council fully. We'll then ask you questions. If the councillors have anything that they have to ask you, if you're comfortable taking the questions, then please do so, but anything you don't feel comfortable with, please let us know. Over to you, Michelle. Good to see you.
Oh, thank you. Madam Mayor, Latrobe City should hang its head in shame in response after my horse was mauled by two bull terriers and I was surrounded and abused by their thug owners in July last year. Every step of how Latrobe City handled this incident was a disgrace, leaving me in trauma with little to no support. And I have to say, I didn't even know this agenda item was up tonight until I found out by accident. I've decided to speak publicly for the first time after spending months fearing my own safety due to the high levels of violence from these thug owners. Firstly, I want to preface that I love dogs, but I've always adhered to the adage, there are no problem dogs, only problem people. So it's the people who cause the unwanted behaviour in our pets. I was riding my horse past an unfenced property along a public road that it's popular with horse riders and trail bike riders when two bull terriers rushed out and attacked. One dog was hanging off my horse's neck, the other locked its jaws onto my boots and wouldn't let go. There was no escape. I screamed the most blood-curdling scream I've ever mustered. 3 property occupants ran out and attempted to remove the dogs, but there was little they could do as the dogs had locked on and they had no collars. My horse was reefing in terror. These dogs were in full attack mode. If I had come off, I have got no doubt that these dogs would have gone for me and ripped my face off. The dogs were somehow removed in the chaos. My horse and I stood there in the centre of the road, trembling in terror. I saw blood dripping off my horse and onto the road. He was badly injured, but I was too scared to dismount in case these dogs would return and attack again. I asked where they were, and one of the people said they had put the dogs inside. It was then that the 3 occupants surrounded me and began the most violent and abusive tirade with the most disgusting and sexist language. They called me names beginning with F and C, refusing to let me pass so that I could go away and attend to my horse's wounds. I was crying in terror, repeatedly calling 000. I have GPS data tracking exactly where I was when this happened, and I have video footage of which many of the councillors here have previously seen. I have since anecdotally heard that these people and dogs have attacked another horse rider, chased other passing vehicles, trail bike riders and tractors. But other locals I have spoken to were too scared to speak out due to the violent nature of these thugs. I began slowly walking my horse, attempting to pass. I needed to keep him calm due to his injuries, but these people became so enraged. One of them ran towards the house and began loudly banging on the door, screaming that he was going to let the dogs loose again, using the dogs, threatening to use the dogs as a weapon. I screamed in terror and my horse took off in a gallop and we got away. It was then a neighbouring farmer found me on the road and called some locals to help usher my horse and I back to my trailer, where police attended and took a statement. I took my horse to a 24-hour vet who was treated for several deep puncture wounds on the shoulder and neck. To this day, I still suffer from nightmares, PTSD, and I'm still scared of dogs approaching me in the street. Latrobe City's response, if you want to call it that. The attack occurred on a Saturday, but local laws did not attend until Monday, leaving me in limbo, wondering if anything was going to happen and if my incident was serious enough for anyone to do anything. When the officer did arrive, he actually asked me to return with him to the scene of the incident to identify the dogs and the property. This was despite me telling how violent the owners and the dogs were, and despite me still being a high state of fear. I refused to go. He went himself and there was only one dog there on the property when the officer arrived. So obviously they must have removed one of the dogs. I was later told that this dog was not registered, but the owners somehow agreed to reimburse my vet bill, which I'll get to in a moment. After this, I heard very little from Latrobe. No support, nothing, despite living with trauma. It just beggars belief that these dogs were not instantaneously seized amidst such a serious attack. So just to contrast, a similar happened in the ACT, in which a horse was mauled by loose mastiffs while being ridden along a public trail. The owner of this horse told me that the ACT local laws intervened immediately, seizing the dogs and had them euthanised. A friend who had been chased by one of these dogs on his motorcycle weighed in not long after this incident and called Latrobe City Call Centre on the back of my incident to add some weight to the investigation. But I was told that the person on the call centre was discussing the nature of the incident and editorialising it, even with this random caller, despite it being under investigation. This absolutely gobsmacked me. It's not for a call centre employee to discuss a case with a caller. And what if it was the dog owners calling up and fishing for information? So I was told the incident was going through a legal review, yet to this day, I don't know any of the reasoning behind the outcome of this review. Out of the blue last November, a Latrobe City officer called me to ask if I was satisfied with the outcome of my case. What? There was an outcome? Nobody told me that there was an outcome. I was told that the money from the vet bill was actually paid by the owners of the dogs and was sitting there waiting for me to collect in the weeks after the incident. But because I did not respond to a text message, which I never got, the money was returned to the owners of the dogs. So the council ended up reimbursing me for the cost of the vet bill, which is great for me, but the ratepayer should not be footing the bill for something that occurred from people who can't look after their dogs. So to this day, I'm still wondering if Latrobe City's gone back to reimburse the money from these people. And have these dogs been listed as dangerous? Have the owners been fined? Nobody's told me anything. I just find it incredible that during this whole process, the onus has been put on me to prove what has happened, and I've got no idea if anything's been happening to the attackers. So the report being noted tonight, it might be too little too late to do anything for me and other people I know who have been attacked by dogs in Latrobe City. But I hope to dear God that there's a law change, because I just hope that nobody else has to go through this horror and the hopelessness of being mauled by dogs.
Thanks, Michelle. And Michelle, I know based on conversations that we've had, that is not easy for you to share in that story. So thank you so much for allowing us that opportunity to hear from you directly. You were kind enough to allow me to give voice to some of the concerns previously, but I'm glad that you felt that this was a space where you could come and speak to us tonight. You do have, as we have discussed, our apologies and significant concern, but I think it is important at this point that I hand over to the CEO to provide some of his response also. So if you just stay with us, Michelle, and then we'll come to councillors if at that point you feel comfortable to take questions.
Oh, thank you.
No worries.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I also wanted to acknowledge Michelle, and for others that have had been impacted in the past through dog attacks and the like. We've had some other presenters that have come along to previous council meetings as well that have raised those concerns with us. That it does cause significant trauma to individuals like yourselves and others, and also acknowledge there are a number of elements as part of this particular matter involving yourself, Michelle, that were handled very poorly, and I apologise that this occurred and acknowledge we could have done a lot better. I will also follow up with you in relation to a further response. I suppose the report on tonight's agenda came about as part of a motion that was put forward a little while ago, and it seeks to identify actions, some of which have already been implemented, to improve dramatically on what has occurred in the past and address issues moving forward. So it's probably all out at this stage, but we will follow up with you, Michelle.
Oh, thank you. It is quite upsetting because every time this incident comes up, I've got to go through it again and just explain the whole process again, and I just can't put it behind me. But I don't want to give up on it too, because it's too important.
And Michelle, I know this is somewhat, my council colleagues will indulge me, I'm sure. Not easy, and we understand that. We can clearly see that. And for those of us that have had conversations with you, we know what some of the glimpses of the experience were that you had, but we cannot possibly understand what that meant for you personally, not only at the point in time, but subsequent to that. And what we will do is ensure from this point in time forward, your single point of contact will be via the CEO. But of course, you're also most welcome to contact any of the councillors at any point, and we will be back to you, and that'll be managed by the CEO from this point forward. Michelle, are you comfortable to take questions from the councillors at this point, or would you rather not? I just want to give you the option.
Oh, yep, I can talk.
Okay, fantastic. I think you know the high regard in which they hold you. So, as you know, they have a great deal of respect for you, your work and your experience. Councillor Harriman, you're first up.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Thanks, Michelle. I know this is hard. I know you're one of the people that's the reason that I put up the notice of motion in September. You and another person who shall remain nameless who went through a similarly horrific attack. So I thank you for fronting up again. I know you only found out today, and I sincerely apologise for that. And I believe the other person who was behind us putting up the notice of motion in September last year, excuse me, also didn't know about it, and I apologise on behalf of council for that. Moving forward, have you had a chance to have a look at some of the recommendations in the executive summary about some of the changes?
Yes, I have. But I'm just a bit unclear, and I'm just wondering if you might be able to brief us about what some of those changes are.
All right, yep. Is that all right, Madam Mayor, or can the CEO?
I'd have one of the officers do it.
That'd be good.
I also just, Councillor Harriman, and I will allow you to ask further questions.
Yep,
I just am aware that we've broken into that. And I am acutely aware that my colleagues are allowing me some indulgences tonight. Thank you so much. I will have the CEO respond to that. Also further to that, Councillor Harriman, in the event that the person does wish to present to us before consideration of that report, I'm happy to allow it. Yep. There is no compulsion, of course, whether they would like to present here, whether they would like to present via Zoom, and that can be accommodated in a private room in the building if they would prefer. We can ensure we do that and hear the matter at a later point if preferable. So we can make that work. Mr. CEO, through you, in relation to a synopsis of, given the lateness of the matter and the report, are you able to take us through that, please? And we'll come back to Councillor Harriman for another question.
Sorry, Madam Mayor, I actually missed the question.
Sorry, it was a question sorry, I was asking the CEO to finish up something else. Michelle, because of the nature of the lateness of the indication of the report being available, was just asking for a bit of an overview of what it is that's contained within the report itself.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. So one of the primary actions, it's on page 478 of the agenda from my perspective, really relates to trauma response in terms of how officers deal with these sorts of matters. I think there'd been some work done on this in the past, but not as significant as what we're now undertaking. So that's really addressing some of the primary concerns that have been made previously, and also by Michelle, about how we actually deal with as individuals in the community who've been impacted by these sorts of events. So that's one of the major ones. The community education plan, in terms of undertaking more work in relation to how we actually deal with these matters, and also I think Michelle touched on this about people having greater responsibility for how they actually manage their pets themselves. So there's a work proposed over the next 12 months in terms of continuing to undertake that. focus. In terms of penalties and cost recovery, we are looking at what our current budget says and what future budgets say, but they're in terms of how we manage that and the costs associated with it. So that's part of that review of fees and charges to make sure that there's the appropriate penalties. Obviously, we don't want to be in that place where we have to worry about imposing penalties. We'd rather be at the front end in terms of ensuring people do the right thing, particularly around registration of their animals. That's another thing that we want to ensure that's undertaken well in the community. And there are some processes we can go through to establish how many dogs we believe are unregistered and work with the communities, particularly in certain areas, about how we increase registrations. That's another thing that we're looking at doing. They're probably the main ones that I see about improving how we undertake our work, but just generally in terms of improving the processes internally so that when these incidents occur, and firstly trying to avoid them, as I said earlier, but secondly when they do occur, making sure we have the right processes in place to deal with them effectively is probably a high-level summary. Happy, though, to follow up with some more information directly to Michelle and others.
Thanks so much. Steve, Dale, question? Sorry.
Yeah, thanks,
Councillor
Madam Mayor.
Harriman, there you
That's
go.
right. Hey?
Don't mind me, just Councillor Harriman. I called you Dale.
Dale, that's all right. Just as long as you don't put an R in there, we're fine. Michelle, I don't want to put you back through because I know how traumatic this has been for you. On the day this happened and you rang me, I know you were probably in a little bit of shock and fairly horrified about what had happened. You did mention some of the information you provided, and I won't go into that now because I think that's something I'll discuss with the CEO. But you did mention that you wanted to be part of making a change later on about what had happened. I'm just wondering, we have a part of this, and if the CEO can correct me if I'm wrong, that we have an updated and a best practice guide for the management and investigation of dog attacks. You've been through the process and it hasn't been pleasant. I'm wondering, are you up to it? And I know you're busy. If a copy of that was sent to you, that you could actually go through it and maybe have a look and see from a victim's point of view what we might be able to do better. Is that something that you'd be willing to do or not? Not wanting to put you on the spot.
That would be great. Yes, thank you. I'd like to do that.
Thank you, Michelle. Madam Mayor, through you to the CEO, is it possible that that be passed on to Michelle, but that we also discuss with her quite openly from a victim's point of view, and maybe with the other person that has sustained the attack as well, if both those...
And we've also confirmed that they don't wish to speak, but we appreciate them given the opportunity. I have a level of comfort. I think it's just more about working through the process to ensure that we make sure that that happens.
I can follow that up with my officers.
Thank you,
and
that'd be
Michelle.
great.
So the CEO
But
will look after that for you.
I just think those two people were the driving force behind the notice of motion I put up, and I just think their feedback from a victim perspective and what they've been through would be really good for Latrobe City.
So, Councillor Harriman, I
Thank
just
you.
want to be clear at this point because I think it's important. So on the basis of that, that will be Michelle and another person known to me, also known to the CEO, who will be provided that opportunity so that they're able to provide that feedback as well. Comfortable? Michelle, were you going to say something then?
Oh, yes, sorry. Just in response to what Mr. Piacenti was about, a front-end approach to responsible dog ownership and registration. I think these are very important campaigns to roll out within the municipality. However, I'm just concerned that the people involved in this incident, I don't think are interested in participating in lawful participation in community, and I don't think that they would be able to be reached in these kinds of campaigns. I'm just wondering if council is flagging any changes in seizing dogs that have been implicated in attacking people or animals.
We wouldn't normally take a question, Michelle, but I'll allow it on this basis. My colleagues seem comfortable. Mr. Piacenti, and then we'll move on to the next lot of questions.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I do agree with Michelle in relation to there are some challenges with some individuals in communities who, regardless of how many times we ask for people to register their animals and do the right thing, that there may still be challenges in terms of getting them to do the right thing and being responsible pet owners. But I'll have to take the rest of the question on notice and get back to you about what our processes would be into the future in terms of how we deal with that.
Councillor Harriman, can I just confirm, did you have any more further questions before I move on?
No, all good, thank you, Madam Mayor.
No problems. Councillor Gibson's next up. Any other councillors wish to speak beyond that? I'll come to you next. Councillor Middles has a question. Yeah, okay.
Madam Mayor,
Yep.
do I take it from the conversation so far that we're going to contemplate deferring item 11.2?
Just wait for a moment. Mr CEO, do you feel that you would be able to, as a result of the actions coming from it, continue the body of work, or would you need a deferral, do you think, to be able to do that? Can I just get a process response on that one?
I suppose from my perspective, Madam Mayor, in terms of what's currently contained within the report, I would have been comfortable that it moved forward. It's obviously a matter for council as to whether you want to defer the matter, but I would be comfortable, and we would then also follow up with the individuals involved, as we touched on earlier.
If there was a nature of a consideration for maybe an extra element to be added to that, Councillor Middlemiss, or any of my other council colleagues, perhaps an additional point to confirm a nature of what we've done tonight, be comfortable with that as well. We just need some words. Councillor Gibson, question before the question? Sorry, did you have a question about that?
Actually feed into that.
Let's do that.
Right.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you. Okay. All right. Thanks, Michelle, and I really thank you for having the courage to actually speak about it and relive it again. Thank you. My question is, I note that you have said you're comfortable or happy to actually have your input in this, but tonight the motion that we're going to actually vote on is that council notes the actions taken by officers to address the points raised in the motion in the notice of motion that Dale put up. Now, bearing in mind that you actually haven't read it and wanted to have some input, would you feel it is better to defer this until you've actually done that, or you're happy as one of the people who were behind this being done in the first place, would you be happier for a deferral?
I had a brief read through the agenda item, but I was a bit unclear because it just seemed pretty vanilla, and that's why I was just asking for a bit of a recap in case my limited brain was missing the main points. I suppose I would like it to be strengthened a bit, with actually coming down a bit heavier with penalties and seizing dogs that have been implicated in such serious attacks.
No worries.
Gallery, honestly, tonight, I'm not going to do it. So let's just... Councillor Gibson.
Thank
question.
Yes. So to recap my ask of you then, if I've got you right, then you would prefer this to be deferred until you actually read it and have your input. Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah, I think it needs tweaking a bit, but I'm happy to have a bit of a workshop with Latrobe City about that, and maybe with the other person implicated in this as well.
Yes, no worries.
I think that's sufficient to move us through from that point. Thanks, Councillor Gibson. Did you have any other specific questions for Michelle? No. Councillors, any further questions for Michelle? No. Michelle, thank you once again. Mr Piacenti will be in touch with you to have some conversations. As we continue through, you'll see consideration of this matter. Councillors, if we need an adjournment in advance of that, we can consider that. If not, I'll have the governance team work towards an additional point within that, or potentially a procedural deferral for that item, but we'll get a bit closer to that if we need an adjournment coming up to that, councillors. Michelle, wish we were seeing you in better circumstances, but good to see you again. Hope everything's going well where you are.
Oh, thank you.
All right. Thanks so much. We're going to continue to move on. That was all of our listed speakers for this evening. Thank you to everyone who's taken the time to engage with us this evening, and those who have previously provided information to us on any of those matters and listening in or partaking in the nature of the conversations this evening. Councillors, we're moving through. Next on the agenda, I have item 7. This is strategic items for decision. 3 reports listed in this section tonight. The first is 7.1. This is Councillor Howe, I note you. This is the Traralgon Flood Recovery Project funding, commencing on page 7 of the agenda. Councillor Howe?
Happy to move, Madam Mayor.
Moving. Do I have a seconder, councillors? Councillor Harriman is my seconder. Do I have any opposition, councillors? Councillor Howe, to you first up.
Thank you. Love to speak, Madam Mayor. A little
If
bit
you
nervous
wish.
in front of such a large crowd,
It's a
but
big crowd.
we'll do our
It's a
best.
big crowd.
Okay. Madam Mayor and everybody in the room, this motion is about rebuilding and flood-proofing our infrastructure that was destroyed by floods over 2 years ago at the Traralgon Rec Reserve. This reserve is a home to over 10 different groups. And how they're affected, is all varied between the different groups. Some weren't affected at all, like the Teeters Football Club, and other clubs, unfortunately, they lost everything that they had. In consultation with the user groups, the decision was made to rebuild the facilities for the clubs that had to stay at the reserve, such as the Traralgon Football Netball Club and the Cricket Club, but to move those clubs that we could up to Glenview Park. So over the next 12 months, we developed, again in partnership with the user groups, a master plan for the Rec Reserve and for Glenview Park. The cost of building the new facilities was well out of Council's financial capacity, estimated at $10 million. So Council and our affected clubs lobbied both state and federal governments for funding. At this stage, we have $4.75 million from the state, we've got $2 million committed from the Council, and we've got a further $250,000 from our insurance claim. And we're still waiting on our federal friends to chip in a little bit as well. So what you can see is we're well short of what we need. And as we continue to lobby for the funds, we've got our footballers and netballers who are playing in the Premium League locally, having to change and shower in portable rooms, as well as our cricketers and for our female footballers. Another issue that we face is that every month we wait for new funding, the construction costs continue to rise. So our $10 million build is now sitting at $11.6 million and rising. So we need to make a decision to get started tonight. The recommendation in this report is to stage the build, with the first stage being the flood-proof multi-use pavilion at the Traralgon Recreation Reserve and an indoor multi-sports hall at Glenview Park. To do this, the motion also proposes that Council contributes a further $1.6 million from our unallocated cash reserve, and we allocate $1.7 million from the federal government's local roads and community infrastructure program. The motion also endorses an allocation of $25,000 towards the development of the concept plans for the new men's shed, and also refers an allocation of $650,000 to the 22-23 end-of-year budget process for consideration to the men's shed project. We've heard Lynn speak tonight on behalf of the men's shed, and they want a commitment from us for land, and they're looking at the land near the Croquet Club. We've already got an endorsed master plan for Glenview. So the best way forward that I can see is that we use the $25,000 to develop the concept plans. We can talk to the men's shed then about where they want to move and look at if we can do it. We have to consider the other user groups. We have to consider the residents around Glenview. But if we work together, I'm sure that we can work out and work through with something. We consider this in about September, so by the time we get the concept plans done, we'll be then talking about the funding. So I think that's a great result for the men's shed. And in the meantime, we can continue to advocate to the state and federal government for additional funding. So in summary, we're talking about a major outdoor sporting facility in Traralgon and our community having to use portable facilities or substandard flood damaged facilities. And all the time wondering when the next 100-year flood, which seems to come around every 5 years, is going to occur. So I seek support from my fellow councillors so we get started on these two important projects. Thanks, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Howe. Councillor Harriman to speak or reserve, keeping in mind there's no opposition, so there's no reply from the first speaker.
No, I'll have a quick little chat. I think, thanks to Councillor Howe, he's covered just about all the points. Thanks to Lynn for coming in. I think it's really important to point out, Madam Mayor, that this facility is, again, a facility that, through no fault of their own, where it's been built, and because there's been no real flood mitigation work done with the bypass, that this site will continue to flood. And I think that's why it's important that we allocate funds, as we have $3.3 million extra from Council to the $2 million we've already put in, to actually try and get this resolved. Because if we don't
put this money in and get it started now, as Councillor Howe said, in 3, 4, 5 years' time, we're going to be flooded again. The men's shed, if they're still in that same location in 3, 4 years' time, are not going to be with us. And unfortunately, the great work they do in the community, and particularly with men's health, is going to be lost to this community, and as may be some of those men. So I think it's vitally important that we look at point 5 and refer an allocation of $650,000 to the end-of-year budget process for consideration. I think it's important we continue to talk to the men's shed, and as Councillor Howe said, work with them on the best location. Look at the master plan, see what we can do. As I said, for the football club, for the cricket club, and for the roller derby, there is a solution for them, and that's great. It's a really, really good outcome for that part of our community. But I think it's the Marines that have the saying, no one gets left behind, and I think we need to take that attitude on. And while this is a bit of a burden on our community, it is saving the community so much in the long term. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Harriman. Councillor Gibson, question?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. My question is, okay, with point 4, how we're allocating money towards concept plans for the men's shed, is that enough to actually ensure that their grants doesn't have to go back, please?
Through the CEO?
Yep.
I'm not exactly sure of the conditions of the grant that for which the applicant, the men's shed group, have applied, but the idea behind the funding allocation in our council decision was about doing some forward planning that would then assist council to both continue to advocate to both levels of government above us to try and secure additional funding, or assist council in its final determination about a further allocation of funding. So I'm not able to answer the question fully in terms of whether that would have an impact on the funding that's already been provided to the group.
Subsequent question then,
Sure.
please. Can I ask that we actually make those calls, please?
I can take that question on notice, yep.
Yes,
Sorry.
please.
Thank you,
Thank
Councillor
you.
Gibson.
Councillor Clancy.
I just wanted to speak, Madam Mayor, just in support of this recommendation, our motion that Councillor Howe has put forward and Councillor Harriman has seconded. Obviously, there's a lot of work that needs to be done, and this particular motion that talks about this $1.7 million is the start, and I think that's what we start to look at. And I know that we've spoken a lot about the men's shed this evening, but the other clubs that are there as well. But I did want to just, and I know that we've already spoken about the men's shed, but I just wanted to also speak, and I wanted to say to Lynn, thank you very much to you, but also to the other members who have come out and support this evening. What I suppose point 4 that the Councillor Gibson had just mentioned, where it endorsed the allocation of $25,000. As a whole, when we look at $25,000, it's not a great deal of money, but what it does is it makes sure that you're not lost to us, and it makes sure that you're in front and centre for us as well. So that allocation to come up with concept plans means that now we can allocate people to do the work on it. We've got people within the building, within council, that are going to be dedicated to this. So it means that we go forward. And yes, we don't have the money. I was absolutely delighted to hear Lynn talk about it. She doesn't think it's $2 million, it's closer to $1 million. You know, if we're referring an allocation of $650 for later in the year, we're very, very close to getting towards under $1 million. So we would love to work with you on what your concept plans are, what you think your costs are, and the allocation that we put to you tonight, just purely that you've come out in support of this and you're engaged in this, shows how important it is, and that we think it's important as well. But to the other user groups and around the pavilion and the indoor sports as well, not lost that we're funding those parts as well, but wanted to let you know that you're front and centre for us.
Thank you, Councillor Clancy. Councillor Middlemiss.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Perhaps my talk will be a bucket full of cold water, but let me start by saying that it is excellent planning by the councillors and the council officers to try and remove as much as possible of our recreational facilities from the flood zone. It's absolutely essential we do this to future flood-proof the area where our facilities are destroyed time and time again, and we're almost in a recovery cost cycle. Every 5-7 years, we've got to hand out money because this area got damaged by floods. Also, the opportunity to come up with better facilities. I support that. If you're going to build a new building, build a better one. Build a better facility. So, you know, I am supportive of this motion, but I must say that if I personally had been prioritising the clubs that were involved, the men's shed would have been at the top of the list. I think their involvement, the time involved, the number of people involved, that should have been the first cab off the rank. But my colleague, Councillor Howe, informs me he has a cunning plan. So I will back his moves. He's coming up with the ideas. So, and as everybody said, as Councillor Clancy said, it's underway, and I will support them there. So why am I speaking to this as a Moore councillor? Hardly directly to my heart. State funding is essential for this. We don't have the funding to do this, but ever since the Hazelwood project, the funding for all the state fund, federal funding for all the projects that we got for compensation for Hazelwood, they always give us significantly less than is required to do the job. Now, every time that happens, we borrow or take other money, and that is the money that we would have normally given to upgrading and advancing and improving facilities in the other end of the valley. So, be in no doubt, this, what we're going through now, and which I back to the hilt, is going to cost this end more Maui for facilities. Same as the Performing Arts Centre, same as the swimming pool, I'll call it. I think they've got a much higher name than that. Same as the basketball stadium. They all cost Maui and more for facilities. Now, when we come along to another section here, I'll explain that in more detail. All I'm asking councillors to be aware that doing this costs. I'm sure these other communities will say, yes, do it. It's good planning, it's a good move. But be conscious of that, particularly for the remaining couple of years of this term. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Middlemiss. Councillors, anyone else with questions? Anyone else will speak? No? We're all good? There's no opportunity to close, Councillor Howe, given that there was no opposition. But we have had speakers. So we will put the motion to the vote. Those in favour, Councillor Clancy, Councillor Gibson, Councillor Harriman, Councillor Howe, Councillor Lunn, Councillor Law, Councillor Middlemiss and myself, it is carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. 7-2. Councillor Clancy.
Madam Mayor, I have an alt to put forward. Yes.
Okay, we'll just sit tight.
Sure.
For that, we'll get the alt up on the screen. Okay, councillors, fairly short and sweet. Councillor Harris seconding. So I have Councillor Clancy moving the alt. I have Councillor Harriman seconding. Do I have any opposition, councillors? So no opposition. Would you like to speak, Councillor Clancy?
Ever so briefly, Madam Mayor. This is a trial parking zone within Henry Street, Traralgon. This was brought by Councillor Harriman, and I'm fair to say that this is something that came off the back of a notice of motion of yours. And it's a 12-month trial. In the published agenda, it says that the trial did start in October 2022, and officers were looking to bring back a report in March 2024 to the council meeting. The alternate motion has just brought that forward 3 months to December 2023, so we will have that report brought back to this council chamber within this year. Which is, we believe, in talking to the officers, enough time to have the 12-month trial, find the results, and then bring back a report within this year of 2023. That is the alternate motion. I'm sure that Councillor Harriman has much more insightful information to speak to as a seconder.
Thank you, Councillor Clancy. Councillor Harriman.
I think Councillor Clancy has explained it perfectly, so I'll leave it there.
Thanks so much, Councillor Harriman. Councillors, anyone else would like to speak? No further speakers? We didn't, Councillor... Are you voting early, voting often? We haven't had we haven't had any opposition, but we have had speakers. We're going to put the motion to the vote. Those in favour, Councillor Clancy, Councillor Gibson, Councillor Harriman, Councillor Howe, Councillor Lund, Councillor Law, Councillor Middlemiss and myself. That one is also carried unanimously. Councillors, third item in this section. I note Councillor Gibson was making a move before Councillor Middlemiss. He's given way. So item 7.3 is our disaster ready fund application. Starts on page 19 of the agenda. Councillor Gibson, I noted you.
Moving, please.
Moving. Councillor Middlemiss, was that a seconder? Thanks very much. Any opposition, councillors? There's no opposition, so there won't be a close on this one. Councillor Gibson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would suggest that this is the other one that Councillor Middlemiss was talking about with the subsequent motion. All right, I'm more than happy to move this motion about us doing a retrospective endorsement, because what we're doing is actually applying for funds. As noted with the other motion, it's all about floods. Now, it's not just Traralgon that it occurs with, it's across our whole municipality. Now, I know I get phone calls all the time, not just from Traralgon, but I also get it from our own ward, which is Moe Newborough. There is some areas there that every time it rains, not to the damage that has been done over in Traralgon, but for the individual landholder, it is that. So what we're doing with this application is, or with this motion is, we're asking for, or the officers are asking for our permission to put the applications in to actually get funding from the government. Funding from the government to actually get the mitigation works and strategies in place to try and future-proof our area from flooding, because otherwise it is just like Groundhog Day. We can't keep sustaining this. We can't. It ruins people's lives. It kills people. It is not right. So that's why I'm more than happy to move this motion for us to hopefully get the funding from the government to enable us to help our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gibson. Councillor Middle, Mr Speaker, reserve.
Oh, reserve, yeah.
No problem. Councillor Clancy? Nope, sorry. Councillors, anyone else wish to speak before I come back to Councillor Middlemiss? It's got outmanoeuvred by your friends. Councillor Middlemiss, you're up.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. What is not widely, I think, known in the community, that under some obscure legislation, probably goes back to 1850, local government is responsible for flooding matters. We are responsible for flood mitigation. Now, what has been recognised here by the federal government and the state government is that no local government has the resources to come up with major flood mitigation programs. It might be that the Glengarry and Moe North West 1 might eventually be within our funding ability, but certainly not Traralgon Creek. So what we're seeking here is money to do feasibility studies and do some of the work around all these problems. But councillors, I'll remind you that it was almost 2 years ago that we resolved as a council to try and do some work, do a study around Traralgon. Again, I can't emphasise, on a 7 to 9 year cycle, we'll be back with a flood in Traralgon in only a few years' time, and people's houses get ruined. People's lives get ruined by these floods. And as a council, I think we must take action to try and address this problem. Now, we're asking for money to do that here, but I've been fairly passionate about this issue for some time, and I keep hearing, oh, the Traralgon bypass is holding us up. or the Loyang mine rehabilitation is holding us up. We need to move past that. We need to make the study and say, this is the solution, where is the state government funding, and let the state government get through the Traralgon bypass issue. Let the state government get through the Loyang mine rehabilitation. On a 7-year cycle, we've only got 5 years left. This is build the dam, find a way around. This is a fairly big job. And to be quite honest, I don't think this council can afford to let this matter delay even further. So I strongly recommend funding, applying for funding, particularly for the Traralgon flooding issue. We need to find a solution, particularly for the people who continually get their lifestyle ruined by these floods. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Middlemiss. There's no close on this one, but we have had speakers. We'll put it to the vote. Those in favour, Councillor Clancy, Councillor Gibson, Councillor Harriman, Councillor Howe, Councillor Lund, Councillor Law, Councillor Middlemiss.
Oh, sorry.
Councillor Middlemiss, and myself. That one's carried. You voted early, yeah, but you voted like in right at the front end of everything else. Thank you, councillors. That one's carried unanimously. Next on the agenda are the 8's stat planning through reports in this section tonight. The first one is 8.1, Amendment C126, consideration of a planning panel report and adoption on page 68 of the agenda. Councillors, Councillor Harriman.
Happy to move, Madam Mayor.
Moving, Councillor Howe.
Yeah, happy to second.
Seconder. Have any opposition, councillors? No opposition. Councillor Harriman, did you wish to speak?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This report originally came to Council, I believe, in July last year. Council resolved to send it to a planning panel to have the experts look it over and see what they thought of our recommendation. There were some recommendations to change Amendment C126, come back from the planning panel. They've been included in this. They included the removal of properties from first stage low density residential zone, rezoning due to flood risk, and revising first and second stage rural living zones, land subject to a future bushfire risk assessment. So a couple of minor changes. I think it involved about about 7 blocks had to be rezoned. Otherwise, the panel was pretty happy with it. So we now have endorsement from the planning panel, so I'm happy to move it for our, happy to move it.
Thanks so much, Councillor Harriman. Councillor Howe to speak or reserve?
Oh, I'll just speak briefly. Thanks, Madam Mayor. This work started about 4 years ago when we had our community consultation out at Toongabbie, when we were running through it all. This is really just the next step in the process. And what this will allow is that Toongabbie can then get developed in a structured manner, taking into account any of our fauna and our waterways. So very happy. It's a good plan, good job by our staff, and happy to endorse it. Thanks, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Howe. Councillors, anyone else wish to speak to this one? No further speakers. We haven't had any opposition, but we do have to put it to the vote. Those in favour, Councillor Clancy, Councillor Gibson, Councillor Harriman, Councillor Howe, Councillor Lund, Councillor Law, Councillor Middlemiss, myself. It's carried unanimously. Thanks, councillors. We're on to 8.2, councillors. This is 8.2, the development of land with 11 dwellings at 1 Meredith Street, Traralgon. Do I have a motion, councillors? Councillor Howe. You're moving the proposed motion?
Yes, thank you. Moving the proposed motion.
Okay, do I have a seconder? Do I have any opposition, councillors? Councillor Harriman and Councillor Middlemiss. I'm going to take Councillor Harriman. And back to Councillor Howe.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Oh, hang on. Can you please wait for a moment?
Certainly.
Sorry? Question in advance. Okay, so I can go first up. Okay, and remind me, because I will forget. Councillor Howe, if you'd like to speak.
Yes, oh, sorry. Thank you. The motion put towards us tonight is to approve an 11-dwelling development at 1 Meredith Street, Traralgon. When we approved our Live Work Latrobe, this is the sort of development that was at the front of our minds. This site is located in a substantial change area, less than 500 metres to the train station and the bus stop. The site is zoned residential growth zone, Schedule 2. This is to provide housing at increased densities in buildings up to and including 4-storey buildings, to encourage a diversity of housing types in locations offering good access to services and transport, including activity centres and town centres, and to encourage a scale of development that provides transition between areas of more intensive use and the development of other residential areas. The proposal is for 9 two-bedroom dwellings and two three-bedroom dwellings. The on-site car parking is in accordance with what is required, 1 for each of the two-bedroom dwellings and 2 for each 3 bedrooms and 3 visitor car parks. The site coverage is only 42% with a permeability of 37%. There were 7 objections to this development. Their concerns are listed at the end of the report and have all been addressed. I did have some concerns about the vehicle access to the nearby roads. I've driven past several times in the last week, and I found at different times that there wasn't a problem. But I will say that I wasn't there at 8:30, which is usually the main problem for traffic. I just couldn't, unfortunately, I couldn't get there. But it has been ticked off by our internal engineering team. In the motion, there are 19 conditions to the permit to ensure that it's constructed with minimal disturbance to the neighbours and completed the development addresses the concerns of the objectors, and it also blends in with the neighbourhood character. All in all, I think this is a good development and one I'm happy to endorse. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Howe. Councillor Clancy, do you speak or reserve?
Oh, I'm happy to reserve, Madam Mayor.
Reserving. Before I go to opposition, Councillor Gibson, did you have your question, or would you rather me go to opposition
No, it's
first?
all right. No, it's okay. Thanks, Madam Mayor. My question is, when the Speaker came and spoke to us, he was talking about there is an issue with his property and the drainage, not the drainage pit, the Telstra pit and the fire plug. Are we across that, please?
Yep, so through you, Mr CEO, to the GM, Mr Reardon. Nope.
Hello.
Yep.
Through you, Madam Mayor. To answer your question about the Telstra pit, Councillor Gibson, that is proposed to be relocated as part of the proponent's plans, and it's shown on the site plans. In terms of the fire plug, that will have to be designed accordingly too, in terms of the drainage design and design of the overall development. So I'm comfortable that that can be accommodated as part of any detailed design for a project. Thank you.
Answer your question, Councillor Gibson.
Answers that it shouldn't be an issue.
Thanks so much,
Thank you.
Councillor Gibson. No problem at all. We're then moving to opposition. Councillor Harriman, do you want the option?
Yeah, I have a question first, if I may.
Sure.
Just through you, Madam Mayor, I've looked at the sites and I know this was an issue when this site last came up. Can we pick up the bins there without the truck reversing, which was a problem when this came up a number of years ago?
We've been here a while, haven't we, Councillor Harriman? Too long, Madam Mayor. So I may suggest, through you, Mr CEO, to Mr Reardon again.
Through you, Madam Mayor, as part of the requirements, there's a requirement for a waste management plan to be entered into, so the contract will be actually managed by a private waste contractor, so it's not your standard waste treatment in terms of the large vehicles that you see moving around the sites. It will be a smaller vehicle. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Reardon. Answer your question, Councillor Harriman?
Yeah, sort of, kind of.
Kind of, woulda, shoulda, coulda, maybe, perhaps.
But can I just back
Please,
through you, Madam Mayor?
Subsequent.
What size truck are we talking about, and will it need to reverse out when
Either
it picked
in
up?
or out of the property, yep.
Yep, or through the property, if I could.
Right, good point. Through again, Mr CEO, to Mr Reardon.
Through you, Madam Mayor. On page 280 of the agenda, there's just an overview of the submissions raised. It includes about waste removal. So in that it says a waste management plan has been provided, demonstrating turning paths for waste collection vehicle and bin collection areas, providing acceptable solution to storage and collection for waste at the site. I think it's appropriate to say it can enter and exit in a forward direction. Yes.
Comfortable, Councillor Harriman? Well, comfortable with the answer. You don't
Yeah,
need to
I
be
am.
comfortable with the nature of the response.
Yeah, that's fine.
Councillor Harriman, did you wish to speak in opposition?
Yeah, I will, thanks, Madam Mayor. Look, I have to say, when I was looking at this, I was actually leaning towards supporting it. And as Councillor Howard said, this is the type of development that we need to go ahead in that area. It's that close to a railway line, close to the CBD, looking at higher density occurring there rather than, say, being in Morwell and in English Street having high density houses going in there. It's better that it occurs near the CBD. I understand that. I know last time this development came up, many moons ago, it was 13 odd houses, and I wasn't comfortable with 13 at that stage. At 11, knowing the street, knowing the amount of traffic that's going to be going in and out, with concern still on, and I know the GM has provided a really good bin pickup solution. I still have concerns with a truck going down that street. I just can't get across the line on it. As much as I'd like to, I just can't. And I understand Mr Gowing's concerns. I know the area. I think the solution that Councillor Clancy put up of turning it into a one-way street is a great one, as long as it flows the right way, out of Coates, not into Coates. But I still can't come at 11 houses on this site. It is what we like in that area, but I just don't think this is the right site for it. I think there's just issues with 11 houses on there. I just can't quite get over the line at 11, Madam Mayor. Sorry.
Thank you, Councillor Harriman. Don't owe me apology. Councillor Gibson, question.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question is, okay, we're concerned about the amount of traffic in that street. Can we actually look at, and whether it is part of this or council doing it anyway, can we actually look at what can or can't be done, whether it's changing our bylaws that you can actually park on nature strips or whatever? Can we actually look at that? Because this isn't the only street in our municipality that has this issue. So going forward, can I suggest that we actually do some work around that?
No, you can't, Stuart, you can ask.
Yes.
Mr CEO.
Oh, ask.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The laws that relate to people parking on nature strips are actually state laws, so we can't, without modifying the streetscape, to actually create spaces where cars could park, as in a hard standing area, and dedicate that for parking. We can't just let people park on nature strips because it actually contravenes state laws. So if the state are comfortable to change their laws, allow people to park on nature strips, which they won't be, because it's also about people crossing footpaths and the like. So sorry, probably wasn't leaning into the mic there. So unless there was funding allocation, for example, to allow for areas of the street to be set aside for parking, it wouldn't really be achievable as the current legislation sits.
I think the nature of the question was also around potential solutions. Do we need to go to Mr Reardon in terms of what other potential solutions may exist? Mr Reardon's having trouble with the microphone.
Mayor. Through you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, look, as part of this discussion previously with councillors at the briefing and other meetings, we have discussed doing a traffic investigation of that Meredith Street, so I'm happy to take that on board in terms of doing that. You can't tie it to this development though, it's a separate matter, so essentially we have to consider this application on its merits, and then I'm happy to take on board and do future work in terms of investigation of Meredith Street in terms of traffic impact and safety, yes.
Councillor Gibson, any further question? No? Any councillor wish to speak? I've got Councillor Law, Councillor Middlemers. You do want to fight for it?
No.
Councillor Law, then Councillor Middlemers.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just like to be supportive of this motion from our executive team. I think it's we've got to remember is that under our normal subdivisions that we come across this on a regular basis is that 300 square metres is the minimum housing lot that we kind of allocate towards a dwelling. In this case, we have 11 dwellings, which equates out of the 3,560 metres squared. So it's 323 square metres per dwelling in that development. So I think it quite adequately covers the housing that's going to take place in that block of land, and I'm fully supportive of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Law. Councillor Middlemers.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I voted against this once when it was 13 houses. I've had a long, hard look at this proposal, the smaller number, 11. I'm afraid I can't see much change. I know we have the Live Work Latrobe policy now in force, which encourages much more closer housing in that area, close into the centre of the city. But my original objection was around concentrating people on one block with a tiny outlet and entry. It was the structure which I didn't like. My first look at it is, why don't they put a court bowl with the street along the northern boundary and cut it up into small housing blocks there? Would have been much fewer than 11, but I think they could have achieved the same result. But I'll be quite honest, I believe there are too many dwellings and one entry and exit point. I don't think it is an ideal solution. And so, once again, on principle, I will vote against this proposal. I will remind councillors voting against it is a bit like spitting into the wind. That unelected council called VCAT will no doubt override it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Middlemess. Councillors, any further speakers in relation to this one before I come back to Councillor Clancy, who reserved? Councillor Clancy, you're up.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. And, you know, even for the councillors who've spoken in opposition, this is not ideal. And I think that I don't come to this with support, feeling as if it's the greatest development in the world. But not ideal is the words that I would use with it. I think that, as Councillor Middlemess has said, if we had less numbers of houses, if we had multiple access points, you know, we're getting closer to ideal. It's not ideal, but it does sit inside our planning zone. Now, when we developed the work through our planning scheme of Live Work Latrobe, we developed the Traralgon housing framework. And a part of that framework that we developed was to intensify this region, this exact region, close to public transport, close to shops, close to town. And we did that because we didn't want these size blocks with this size dwellings being done further out of town. You know, you don't want to put it, if I use the word, up in the suburbs, away from services. You want it right in the CBD where people can access. That's what we asked for. That's what's being done. So it's really hard. I find it very difficult to then say, well, we can't approve it. We've asked for this. This is what we said was the future of this city, is to have these infill developments and intensification of these closer to the CBD areas. As Councillor Middlemess has talked about, in 2015, this came to council as an application. It had 13 dwellings on it. This council knocked it back. We refused it. The officer's recommendation was for it to be approved. The councillors decided that they weren't happy with it, and obviously there was reasons for that. Then it went to VCAT and it was overturned successfully. And then it has lapsed in that time. So the new owners of the block have brought it back to us for a planning permit, and our officers have said to us that they believe that if in the event that we knock it back tonight, then once again it'll follow the same suit. That shouldn't be a reason for us to vote either one way. But as Councillor Howe said, 19 conditions on this planning application. I think those conditions are quite stringent. The officers and the planning team have been working with the applicant to ensure that all the concerns, things like the Telstra pit, things like the waste removal, like the crossover area across the nature strip, those things that people came to us about their concerns, the officers have addressed each one of them, and they're quite satisfied that this is a good development and it sits within our planning zone. So once again, not ideal, but that one of those things that we can't change. When someone as a developer comes to us and says I own this land and I'd like to develop this way, all we can do is look at does it sit within our planning zone, and what can we do with you to make those conditions better for the amenity of the neighbourhood. We don't get to tell them that they need to paint it in green or blue. We just put the conditions on what fits the planning scheme. So not ideal, but I'm going to support this tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Clancy. We did have opposition councillors, so that gives Councillor Howe the right of reply.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll just briefly summarise what's been said. If we want to keep Latrobe City as one of the leading regional cities to live in, the most livable cities to live in, this is the sort of developments we need. We need these infill developments, high density living close to the centre of Traralgon and our activity centres. I think the design of this is a very respectful design, respectful to the neighbourhood that it's getting built in, and I'm fully supportive of it, and I hope that the councillors agree with me. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thanks so much, Councillor Howe. Councillors, we have had speakers, opposition and all of those things. We're now going to put it to the vote. Those in favour: Councillor Clancy, Councillor Gibson, Councillor Howe, Councillor Lund, Councillor Law. Those against: Councillor Harriman, Councillor Middlemiss and myself. The motion is carried.
Can we vote again?
Thank you. Councillors, we are now moving to 8.3, land use and development of land for a dwelling at Jumbuck Road. Do I have a motion, councillors? Councillor Harriman.
I'll put up an alternate if I might, Madam
An
Mayor. I think it was
alternate.
prepared for Councillor Ferguson, but as she's not here, I'll put it up for her.
Councillor Harriman, if we just wait for, I note you, Councillor Gibson. I've just got some people leaving, and also just want to note at this point, because I said I would come back to it, can we just formally record Councillor Ferguson as an apology at this point? We're 2.5 hours in. I think we can assume that's where we're going to go from that base, on that basis. Councillors, we have an alternate. We also have those alternates available to you. If we can make clear, there are two, short or long? The long.
Madam
So
Mayor,
councillors,
can I just ask, while we're working this
okay, I'm
out,
just going
might
to
be
let
an opportunity.
anyone that wants to leave, feel
Yeah.
free, and then we'll get back into it.
Might be a nice
Just going to
opportunity.
make it
to leave.
easier for anyone who wants to leave.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Certainly, mate.
Thank you.
Thank you for hanging in with us so long.
Thank you.
That's all right. Sorry? Yeah, I think they were just too polite.
Well, I'll be falling on you. You should be falling off. You can go down the elevator.
Okay, while everybody makes their way out, the officer's going to make sure that everybody gets out of the building. On 8.3, we have an alt. The nature of the alt is the long version. You had two before you, councillors. Councillor Harriman's moving along, so while you can only see part of it on the screen, the conditions which underpin this are attached. Can I just check that all the councillors are comfortable that they have the long version? Got it? Everyone's in? Great, I believe so. Okay, I think we're comfortable enough to move that through. Councillor Harriman moving the alt. Councillor Gibson, I noted you.
Seconding.
Seconding, thank you very much. Any opposition to the alt, councillors? Councillor Clancy is my opposition. Back to you, Councillor Harriman, if you'd like to speak.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I know this decision is very close to Councillor Ferguson's heart, which is why I know she'd be devastated she couldn't be here tonight. This is something that she's worked with in her ward with the local farmers involved. She has come up with quite a number of, and I thank the officers for this, quite a number of points in relation to this permit. I think the pertinent one is point 14, which is on page 3 of the alt, which is the farm management plan conditions. And it states the farm management plan dwelling, Angus beef cattle breeding and rearing, prepared by Dean Suckling of Enpro Ag and Environmental, dated March 2022, must be endorsed to form part of the permit and must not be altered unless otherwise agreed in writing by the responsible authority. The endorsed farm management plan must be implemented and maintained for a period of 5 years after the initial occupation of the dwelling to the satisfaction of the responsible authority. Madam Mayor, I think it's important to realise, as Mr Suckling pointed out, farming is getting more and more intense, and we've seen intense farming taking place overseas. We've probably been lucky in Australia for a number of years with our farms that we've had availability of land. We've seen in a lot of our communities where a farm of 100 acres used to be fine to raise a dairy herd on and actually be sustainable. Now we know it's around about 1,000 acres, which has seen a lot of families move off farms, which has seen productive land become unproductive and become an issue. Here we have a number of hectares that won't be farmed, will be left unless we can put a house on it. As Mr Suckling and Mr Perry pointed out, if you're not there when calving's taking place, you will have large losses, whether that be through death through the birthing process, whether that be calves not getting to their feet quick enough, whether it be for a whole range of issues that can actually be taken care of if somebody's there. Now, when you are living on a property, normal, as Mr Perry pointed out, it's normal to have a calving shed right next door to the house, and it gives farmers a break. You can't expect somebody to be out there at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning and then having to go back and keep an eye on a property. It's no good putting in cameras, it's no good putting in alarms, because if it's a 20, 30-minute drive, the calf could well be dead by the time you get there. And with the prices we're talking about at the moment, and they're likely to go up again, I know they're down this year, but the forecast is for them to go up above what they were 12 months ago. When we're talking about the 15 cattle that were lost in the last season, that equates to about $30,000. That is a big difference between profitability and non-profitability. And I think it's also important to point out, Madam Mayor, that one of the reasons that the state government brought in a minimum size for farmland was the number of, shall we say, weekend farmers that were coming down, buying their 40 acres, buying their 40 hectares, and came up with this great idea that if they put 4 sheep, an emu, a couple of deer and some ducks, then they would be a farm, and they could write that property off as a tax loss. And that's one of the reasons the size issue was brought in, was to take out, for tax purposes, a lot of weekend farmers who were making their $200,000-300,000 in the city and were getting a great little write-off on their little residential farm. That is not what the Perrys are looking at doing, and it's not what a lot of farmers in the area are doing. As I said, these are people who Mr Perry said his son has grown up on the farm. They want a farm. It may not make them squillions of dollars, but a lot of the time it is about lifestyle and life choices. And I think I've gone over time well and truly.
No, it's all right. I didn't hear the bell.
I've just seen the 0, and it's been there a while.
Did I miss the bell?
I'll wind it up there and get into it later. Yeah. Thanks, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Harriman. I was happy to extend you if required, and the officers can feel absolutely encouraged to absolutely belt the bell so I can hear what it is that's happening on the far side of the room. Councillor Harriman, did you need any further time?
No, that's good. I'll close.
No problem. Perfectly fine on that. Councillor Gibson to speak or reserve? Reserve. Councillor Clancy, you were speaking in opposition.
Yes, Madam Mayor. So and I thank Councillor Harriman on behalf of Councillor Ferguson, who has done this work on it as well. And the arguments that you make, Councillor Harriman, are certainly I'm sympathetic to them, and it's not lost on me how difficult farming is. The officer's recommendation that has been put to this council is to refuse the permit based on that the proposal fails to meet the provisions of the planning policy and the framework around the protection of agricultural land. There are 4 points that are published in our agenda as to why the proposal doesn't meet the needs of our planning scheme. The proposal is inconsistent with the purpose and decision guidelines of the farming zone within the Latrobe planning scheme, and it will permanently remove any future potential of that land to be consolidated into surrounding agricultural land. The recommendation that was put towards us, or the proposed resolution that was put towards us, that is not the current the alternate that Councillor Harriman is talking about, does have some faults in it, and I'd like to foreshadow another alternate which was circulated to the councillors as well, which is the colloquially referred to as the short one. We're talking Councillor Harriman's alternate at the moment is the long one, which has a number of, which is to issue the permit, and I would like to foreshadow in the event that is lost, that I would like to propose an alternate to refuse with new conditions. Thanks, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Clancy. Foreshadow on the short one. Pop that there. Councillors, anyone else who would like to speak? Councillor Middlemess.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This type of application arises before this council every few years, where people are wishing to put a house on a, shall we say, a larger than normal rural subdivision type block and continue farming. Often it's a child of the original owners wishing to move out, put a house on the block. And we torture ourselves every time these come up because there is often a very logical case, but as our officers point out, that doesn't meet the planning guidelines. Now, this case, I'm actually very concerned to say this because I'm always very conscious of setting precedents that everybody will rush in and say, you did it this time, you've got to do it for us. But I'm very concerned in this case that there is no chance to consolidate this land any further. If you look at the map on page 350, you'll see that the land concerning the application is surrounded by rural living subdivided blocks. There's no way you can consolidate. These 5 acre people, as I call them, aren't going to sell. They've got their McDonald's mansion on it. They'd want a couple of million for each of them, so it's never ever going to be consolidated. If I can go further, the likelihood, as the pressure for rural living and lifestyle living increases, the likelihood of this parcel of land to inevitably become rural living subdivision is very, very strong. So are we really, shall we say, pushing back against some rules and regulations that won't really apply very much longer in the future as far as this land is concerned? I know part of it's covered by a bushfire overlay. I even suspect people would be prepared to put up a fireproof building in those areas. So what I'm faced with is we can refuse this, and in 5 or 6 years, 7 years' time, all this will be lost. So the rules say we can't, but in this case, I suggest that we do. It's a special case. It can't be consolidated further, so we're not protecting that option. And in fact, we're probably just holding our hand up and preventing it going to rural living. Can I point out, a few years ago, when we were considering one of these, Councillor Harriman and I asked in debate that the government consider looking at special cases and coming up with a set of rules that special cases like this would be considered. Of course, we didn't get an answer. So in this case, I think what I'll call the logic is overwhelming for breaking the normally very good rules and allowing this application to proceed. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Middlemess. Any other councillor wish to speak? Councillor Law.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just to follow on from Councillor Middlemess, and I agree totally with what he's just said. Having lived on a 60-acre property and bred cattle, I know exactly where this comes from. It's certainly not a money-making venture, it's a lifestyle choice. There's people that are born to live on farms and there's people that are born to live in the city. And I'm quite certain that these people who have lived on the land for a long period of time are people that are endeared to that way of living. I have no doubt that they are very genuine in what they're doing, and I'm normally black and white when it comes to these type of issues, but on this point I'm very much in favour of the person being granted the permission to have a dwelling on this property. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you so much, Councillor Law. Councillors, any further speakers? Councillor Howe.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Mayor. Just to speak against the motion, thanks. As Councillor Clancy said, they need to provide justification for the dwelling, and when you consider it against the relevant section of the planning scheme, there wasn't adequate justification. This was supported by Agricultural Victoria, who said there's no need to have a dwelling on the property to run such a venture as they do. It will remove any future potential for consolidation, and the reason is that if you've put a dwelling on it, it artificially increases the price of the dwelling, of the property, due to that capital investment, which means that if another agricultural operator wishes to purchase the land, the price is inflated enough that they can't justify the outlay to obtain a return from an agricultural point of view. If you look at our Live Work Latrobe, one of our main reasons for doing it was to preserve our agricultural land and to prevent negative impacts on our productive agricultural land base. This is a priority of ours, it's a priority of the state government, and also Agricultural Victoria. If you ask me, this permit is a textbook Live Work Latrobe issue, and I'll be voting against it. Thanks, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Howe. Councillors, any further speakers in relation to this? Any questions? Councillor Gibson, you reserved.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm more than happy to support this, and some of the points that my fellow councillors have put up to actually vote against it actually doesn't work. They're talking about protecting agricultural land. Actually, if you look, right, just look at the map. There's the map of what is actually around the site. Now, if you don't allow this to go through, you're not going to have agricultural land. It will actually go the way the other properties have gone. May not be right away, but it will. So you're actually going to lose agricultural land, which is what we're saying we want to do. So you're actually, sorry, you've got it around the wrong way. Okay, and as for consolidation, there is no chance of consolidating this property because, again, go back to the map. It has rural living all around it. You can't do that. So we're actually making a mockery of the points that are being raised to justify not granting this permit. Okay, now we're all about trying to keep people on the land. If you cannot actually, if you can't actually be there to help, and I'm sorry, I am a bit passionate about this because this is livelihoods here. This is also about the future of agricultural land that we say that we are so keen about, but we're actually going to ruin it because with this farming venture that they have there, they actually need to be on site when, and as Mum's here, we know you've got to be on site when the actual baby's born. It is crucial timing. So I'm sorry, I can't say enough how voting against this is actually putting into place the very things that we say the reason to vote against it. It doesn't make sense. They need this property to go ahead with the dwelling there so they can actually keep it as agricultural land and an agricultural business. So I implore you to, if that's what you want, you actually need to vote for this.
The governance team are feeling quite anxious now that they've actually bashed the bell. But you see the effect it had? The effect's a little bit different when you actually hit that bell. It gets everyone's attention. Councillor Gibson, thank you very much. We did have opposition. Councillor Gibson did reserve, which brings us back to Councillor Harriman with the opportunity to close.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's been mentioned that we've had similar properties, not as big. We've had 20 and 40 acre properties come up, and I've actually voted against putting houses on them because they weren't going to be farms. And I think a couple of councillors have made the point here, and I made it earlier. This is a farming family that are choosing not a country lifestyle, but are choosing a work ethic and a work lifestyle that they want to be farmers. They are farmers and they want to keep farming. 5 years from now, if we turn this down, that farmland will most likely be put to the planning minister. It is surrounded by rural living and it will become rural living. So the choice we have is really, really simple. Do we want to see farmers on farmland, not out to make $1 million, but out to continue a lifestyle, to continue living the way they have for a number of years and to continue a family tradition? Or do we want to see farmland taken to the minister who looks at it and goes, goodness gracious, Latrobe City, here is about 50 rural living blocks of 5 and 7 and 10 acres around this 50 acres or 50 hectares. What are you doing? Turn it all into rural living. Does it matter? To me, it doesn't matter that Mr. Perry and his family don't want to make $1 squillion. It does matter to me that they want to actually take some farmland that will be lost to Latrobe City and at least for the next generation, keep it as farmland. 30 years from now, 40 years from now, I have no doubt we'll lose this land, but at least for 30 or 40 years, let's keep it as a farm. We talk about growing up on farms, we talk about intensive farming coming in, and we look at the reason why, and I mentioned it earlier, why were smaller blocks knocked off? And it was simply for tax evasion by others. I dare say that the Perrys are not people that are going to go into this for tax evasion. They're not people that are going to go into this to inflate the value of the land, because 5 years from now, they'll sell it as rural living. It'll go to the minister and they'll make even squillions, even more off it. This is about, and again, I've voted against similar ones, this is about allowing farmers to farm farmland. We're talking about getting more intensive farming across the world. It's coming to Australia, and I think it's a great thing, because the more intensive the farming, it means we start getting families back into our smaller communities that are dying, and it gives them an option to continue to grow. I've probably gone on enough, Madam Mayor, so I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Just got the bell warmed up, Councillor Harriman. Thank you so much. That was our closing. We now need to put the alternate, which has a foreshadow if lost, to the vote. Those in favour, councillors. Councillor Gibson, Councillor Harriman, Councillor Law, Councillor Middlemiss, and myself. Councillor Ferguson can't vote on that one. Those against? Councillor Clancy, Councillor Howe and Councillor Lund. The alternate motion is therefore carried. The foreshadowed is not eligible to be heard. Thank you so much. Councillors, check with the officers. Is that all clear? Got all that? Right, we're good. Ladies and gentlemen, we've been going for a while. I'm going to give everyone a break. Kettles on, make a cuppa, and we will be back in at 5:02, and we'll keep going from there. Works me? We'll just wait for the, oh yeah, sorry, Councillor Clancy did prompt me on this and I completely forgot, so. Motion?
Extension of time.
Second to Councillor Middlemiss. Any opposition? I don't really know what we do at that point if there is.
Go home.
Good, okay, we'll consider that one unanimously carried.
Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillors, so we are now into the nines. I'll just wait for the screens to pop up so that we're actually looking at. Just a question, Madam Mayor. Please, we're just waiting for the screens to double up.
Sorry, Madam Mayor, I just know we have an item which is the last item for the night, and there is a very interested party
Yep.
in there. I'm just wondering if 11.2 could be brought forward, just so that
Alrighty.
that person doesn't have to hang around till midnight, 1 o'clock like the rest of us.
That's fine. Okay, so,
Then we'll all be alone.
I got some dirty looks then.
We can't have that, can we?
no, it's fine. Bear with me, councillors. No, we're not going deferral, we're going alt now, I believe. So, things are moving. Right, so, councillors, bear with me or we're going to be here till midnight. Thank you, Councillor Harriman. We are now going to, for governance to keep up, we're going to bring 11.2 forward. 11.2, review of dog attack processes. It commences on page 476 of your agenda. I believe there is an alt. If we have the alt up on the screen for the councillors, can you see if you can read that? We haven't done a printout for you, it's been brought together. And let's see if there is a level of comfort. If you need it printed, let me know, we can do that. We're just going to bump the size up. What was...
Madam Mayor, even taking into consideration my glasses, would you be so kind as to read?
That the council notes the actions taken by officers to address points raised in the motion. Alrighty, I'm just going to read it for those who are online anyway, I think, because they might not be able to read it. Adopted on Monday the 5th of September regarding response to dog attack. Advocate to the state government to review the laws in relation to the management of dog attacks to preserve public safety. Officers provide the opportunity for those individuals that were involved in previous incidents that occurred during 2022 that led to this report being presented to council, and the opportunity to provide feedback to council officers in relation to the actions taken by officers. Officers present a further report to council in 12 months to provide information in relation to how the actions identified in the report have been implemented.
Just might take that further report to council in 12 months. Just through you to the CEO to see what time frame he thinks he might be able to work his magic in.
Mr. CEO?
I was going to suggest 6 months. Councillor Gibson's a shorter version.
Could we put within the next 6 months?
I'm comfortable with that.
No, I think you need a time frame. Mr. CEO, possibility?
Yeah, that's...
Yep, great. Okay, we'll prioritise that. So, councillors, can I just get you one more check? Councillor Harriman, comfortable to move with that change?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, I am.
Seconding Councillor Gibson with that change?
Yes, please.
Okay, I've got a mover and a seconder on the alt. Do I have any opposition, councillors? Okay, Councillor Harriman, would you like to speak?
Madam Mayor, I just want to take this opportunity to thank two groups of people. First off, the two interested parties, Michelle Slater, who spoke tonight, and the other interested party, who I won't name, that have for 2 years been pushing that we review this and have relived some very, very traumatic experiences during that time. And I appreciate them taking the time to help me with understand how we needed that notice of motion and how we need to move forward with this. And I thank them so much for their input. I know how hard it is for them and their families. I'd also like to thank the officers for getting this report back so quickly. There have been some great changes. I think that the trauma training, so our staff under counselling, that that our officers have gone through. I'd like to thank the CEO for getting that done so quickly. That is of major importance to victims of dog attacks. That's one of the things that the interested parties that have helped with this have been through, and others that have rung me to get an understanding of the victim side of things, I think has been, if we were going to take a first step, that was a great first step, and I'd like to thank the CEO and his officers for doing that so promptly. I'm really keen to see and to give those interested parties a chance to discuss and review and let us know what we need to do moving forward to make this a better plan, and what we need to advocate to the state government to make this a better plan, and what we need to do to serve our community better when this occurs. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Harriman. Councillor Gibson, to speak or reserve?
Speak, please. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm happy to support this motion, but this is not a motion saying that we've already got it all right, because we haven't. And that's why it is very, very important to actually speak firsthand to people who have been in that position, who have gone through the trauma, because when you have gone through the trauma, you actually understand what needs to occur, so somebody else won't go through the same problem. So this is what this is setting out. This is not locking the what's been put together for the policy going forward. This is actually saying that that's a start, but we will actually be speaking and dealing with some of those who have been through this experience to ensure that we get it right. And there are times that our local law and the state laws don't correspond. We can't much as we might like to, we can't overstep the state laws. So if we wish something to be a lot stronger in what we do, and the state law as it stands doesn't allow that, there's an issue there. So we need to ensure that after the conversation going down with the affected parties, what comes out of that, if it is different, we have to be advocating to the state government to ensure that they tighten up the laws state-wise, so we can actually ensure that our residents are actually safe. Because while Councillor Harriman has been speaking about the people he knows, I've also in the past had others who they couldn't live in their house because the dog near them, nothing was done. So we have to ensure going forward we have the tools so our people are safe, so they do not go through this trauma anymore. So this is, while the report was a start, that's what it is. It's a start. Now we need to go from there with sadly the people who've experienced it, but you don't lose the lesson. When there's an issue, don't lose the lesson. So that's what we need to do, and that's hopefully what that will do. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gibson. Councillors, anyone else wish to speak? Councillor Law?
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Look, tonight's been a very emotive night for all parties involved, and I think we can't lose sight of the fact that we have to put a clear process in place that what our staff can do and what the police can do. You know, we can't go above and beyond, but we've got to make it clear in our own minds, in our own words, in our own document, this is what we do and how we do it. And then that reflects back to the community. This is as far as we can go. This is what we can do. Because, you know, all these subjects are always going to be emotive, and we've got to take the emotion out of it and just have a clear process in place that we can protect them as best we can under the rules and regulations that this council can provide. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Law. Councillors, anyone else want to speak to this? No, we haven't had any opposition, so you don't get the opportunity to close, councillor Harriman. But we have had speakers, so we'll put the alternate motion to the vote. Those in favour, councillor Clancy, councillor Gibson, councillor Harriman, councillor Howe, councillor Lunn, councillor Law, councillor Middlemiss and myself. One is carried unanimously. Thank you.
Madam Mayor,
Councillors.
before the next item, which I believe is 9.1, could I ask at your indulgence?
Absolutely, you certainly can. And in the event if anyone else from the gallery is leaving at any point, could I just have an officer ensure that they're escorted to their vehicle, please? Thank you very much. Councillor Middlemiss, a question.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. What I would like to hear through you from the officers is if I was to move a deferral of item 9.1 to allow further consideration of the priorities listed there, what effect would a deferral have on the operation of the council? I'm talking about the mid-year budget review.
Mr CEO.
I might also, thank you, Madam Mayor, just get some advice for officers. The items that are listed there, in terms of points 1 to 4, on 9.1, I'm not quite certain how far progressed they are and whether that funding is required in the very short term, near term or not, whether the General Manager assets and presentation, planning and Jodie Reardon's able to help me with that one.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Those top 4, in terms of what been identified, there's either, I'm just looking at Duncan Cameron, we got, in relation to point 2, we got an existing quote in place to do that. So to proceed with that project, the funding is needed to be able to finalise that before the end of the financial year. Newman Park is probably an OHS risk, so that's something that I think should be dealt with at this point in time. I can't comment on the progression of point 1 and point 4 at this point in time. That's something I'd have to take a notice.
And the other point I've just been advised, just in terms of being able to move forward, I think it's with our budget process, just understanding that item 5 is actually also available, so it's going to create a couple of issues for us in terms of delaying this report for another month. Could have my point is, sorry, to clarify, could have a flow-on process in terms of other processes like our budget and those projects.
I had some difficulty hearing the officer, but I gather that there would be severe inconvenience by deferring. On that basis, I will withdraw my proposal to defer and use my opportunity to speak. Thank you.
Okay, so happy to move? Councillor Middlemiss? No. Councillor Howe? Councillor Howe's moving. Do I have a seconder? Okay, Councillor Harriman? No, I was staring at him long enough until, a hand went up. Do I have opposition? No opposition? Councillor Howe, back to you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Each year we do a review around this time just to make sure that the council is travelling against the adopted budget and we don't need to prepare a revised budget. And even though we don't need a revised budget, our finance team has forecasted that we will have an end-of-year surplus of nearly $4 million. And there's 5 recommendations at this stage to be considered against the surplus. So I'll just run through them. We've got the Traralgon Courthouse, the toilet construction works, Duncan Cameron Reserve, the cricket net replacement, Apex Park, Moe, the changing places toilet. Now I believe these projects have been started and we need to have these funds to complete these jobs. The next item is the Newman Park Traralgon. We've got a softball surface replacement. This is a safe requirement, so I don't think we can move on that one either. And the final one's an allocation of $850,000 to a capital works reserve for our future capital needs. So yeah, happy to move. Thanks, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Howe. Councillor Harriman, Speaker Reserve.
Madam Mayor, I think Councillor Howe has probably nailed most of it. Just to so the community knows, the budget surplus forecast is $3.9 million, and we're looking at spending a total of $1.3 million on the. Hang on. I think about 1.3 if my maths is about correct, which will give us an opportunity to look at a number of other projects moving forward. These ones, as Councillor Howe stated, have started. They do need the extra funds to complete them. So I think it's within our bounds that we actually need to fund them. Whereas the others, we can continue the discussion so that we get the best result for the community. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Harriman. I've got lost now. Councillors, anyone else wish to speak? Councillor Middlemith.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've elected not to oppose nor defer this, or attempt to defer this matter on the basis that the projects listed have commenced. I will accept that. I think in future I will expect officers to not commence projects that they can't complete, because those matters have to come back to council. In a previous item, I spoke about the inevitability of state funding, federal funding, meaning that projects were costing us more and more and sucking the funding out of opportunities in Moe and Morwell. I'm still very strongly of that belief, and the ones we just approved, and I totally supported them, the flood mitigation works, are sucking more money out of facilities in Morwell and Moe. And here I am being asked, literally an hour or so later, to approve Traralgon Courthouse, Duncan Cameron Reserve, Traralgon Newman Park, Traralgon. Now, councillors, yeah, and Moe, and I totally support that. Yeah. If I can just explain to you what brings me to this sort of view. I've had a soccer club contact me in the last couple of weeks, and contact's the wrong word, attack me. They claim to be the largest soccer club as far as participants are concerned in the Valley. They are playing at the highest level, at the state level, down to the lowest junior level, and they have been waiting for years for better lighting on their pitch. Their practice pitch is about 1 candle power, but we'll go to the Traralgon Courthouse first. Even though they've been waiting for years. The baseball club in Morwell, it's a winter game, and by the time their crew arrives to practice, again, it's almost candle power, and they've been waiting for quite a few years to come up the list for lighting. In fact, they fell off the list mysteriously in this budget process. Our top AFL ground, simply top because one of our top level clubs in one league plays there, and a top level club in another league play there, both at the highest level possible, do not have a net at the back of their ground, and the very expensive top grade balls keep going in a creek and have to get a new one to continue the game because they can't find a blasted thing. Now, they have been waiting for 18 months for another net. Now, these things are just as important to the people and sports players and more, and I'm sure if I ask a Moe councillor will give me another list. So what I'm seeing is a developing tendency here at the officer and council level to focus on one area only. Now, poor old CEO shirking there. But what I will say is that councillors and officers, we need to step back and say, have we deprived the other end and the south of the city of funding, and do we need to adjust our thinking? Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Middlemith. Councillors, anyone else wish to speak? Councillor Gibson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I take notes of what my fellow councillor said, and I understand very much what he says because I get representation weekly, if sometimes daily, on that notes. I'm not saying that some of these other projects aren't important, but we need to ensure we do it across the board. That's all I'll say.
Thanks, Councillor Gibson. Any other councillors wish to speak? Haven't had any opposition, so there isn't the opportunity to close. We need to put this... We're sort of kind of, but not really sort of officially. Gentle opposition. This is it. We'll put it to the vote, councillors. Those in favour, Councillor Clancy, Councillor Gibson, Councillor Harriman, Councillor Howe, Councillor Lund, Councillor Law, Councillor Middlemiss and myself. Thank you so much. Moving into 9.2, Business Recognition Awards. Councillor Clancy is leaving. We'll just give Councillor Clancy the opportunity. I notice Councillor Middlemiss and Councillor Gibson. I'll just wait. Councillor Middlemiss moving. Councillor Gibson seconding. Any opposition, councillors? Oh, that's not nice. It's late and I just completely got sucked in. Absolutely fell for it. Okay, no opposition, councillors. Councillor Middlemiss would like to speak.
Madam Mayor, this point, this report is very straightforward. It just looks again.
Just quickly, Madam Mayor, I'm happy to support this motion because small business is the backbone of our community, and I think it's really important that we actually acknowledge that and support them any way we can. Thank you.
Sorry, I'm off mic. Thank you, Councillor Gibson. Councillors, anyone else would like to speak? Had speakers put the motion to the vote. Those in favour, Councillor Gibson, Councillor Harriman, Councillor Howe, Councillor Lund, Councillor Law, Councillor Middlemiss and myself. That one is carried unanimously. If we could retrieve Councillor Clancy from the biscuit barrel. He's gone looking for Kingston's. What did he find?
Snickers.
Oh! When did that happen? Okay, a third item on the agenda. Yep. 9.3, Council Policy Review, Building Over Easements Policy, Building Application Fee Refund Policy, Waiver of Building Permit Application. I hope you two know whose hand went up first. Fees Policy, Demolition Works Policy, Councillor Howe, were you my mover? Yep, Councillor Harriman is a seconder. Have any opposition, councillors? Councillor Howe.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Just quickly, it's good practice to continually review our council policies. This way it ensures that we meet any new legislative requirements as well as any of our community's expectations that may have changed. Tonight there's four that we're looking at. They are the Building Over Easement Policy, the Building Application Fee Refund Policy, and the Waiver of Building Permit Application Fee Policy, and the Demolition Works Policy. These were all adopted 4 years ago in 2018. And they've been reformatted to reflect our current policy templates, including changes of divisional names, officer titles, other officer names, and to reflect the current legislation. The only major change is the rewriting of one paragraph in section 4 of the Building Over Easement Policy. The reference to an agreement under section 173 of the Planning and Environment Act of 1987 has been replaced by the term an agreement. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Howe. Councillor Harriman, Speaker Reserve.
No, all done. I'm good. Thanks, Madam Mayor.
Councillors, anyone else wish to speak to this? We've had no opposition, but we have had speakers. We'll put it to the vote. Those in favour, Councillor Clancy, Councillor Gibson, Councillor Harriman, Councillor Howe, Councillor Lund, Councillor Law, Councillor Middlemiss and myself. It is carried unanimously. Councillors, we're on to 9.4, Audit and Risk Committee matters commencing on 4.32 of your agenda. Councillor Law, moving. Seconder, please. Councillor Gibson. Any opposition? Councillor Law, do you wish to speak?
Yes, thanks, Madam Mayor. I think Bev Excel has been an exceptional auditor for our council. She's led by example the whole way through those 9 years, and I have no doubt that the reports that have been brought back and audited by her have been well endorsed by council and followed through, and we've got great results out of them. So I can only applaud our officer's recommendation to everybody here, but to the fact to Bev, we do need to give special mention for the amount of work that she's done above and beyond as an auditor to this council. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Law. Councillor Gibson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As one of the people who were actually on the interviewing board when it came forward with Bev, she was the standout. So am I surprised by the comments that my fellow councillor said? Not at all, because that's what she showed during the interviewing process. So I think it's only fair and fitting that we actually acknowledge her and the great work that she has done, and we put the advertising out to try and fill some large shoes. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councillor Gibson. Any other councillor wish to speak? Paid speakers, put the motion to the vote. Those in favour, Councillor Clancy, Councillor Gibson, Councillor Harriman, Councillor Howe, Councillor Lund, Councillor Law, Councillor Miller, Miss myself. That one's carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. This is 9.5, authorisation of council officers under the Planning and Environment Act. I know councillor. Sorry?
We're arguing over who goes second.
It's a problem around my heads down. Officer under Planning and Environment Act 1987, Councillor Gibson. I noted you moving.
Yes, please.
Councillor Lund seconding. Any opposition, councillors? It's procedural. Do you need to speak to this one, councillor, or are we happy to move through? Consider that one carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. I don't believe there's any matters of urgent business, but there's a lot going on and I might have missed something. Nope, no matters of urgent business, councillors. We'll pass over those.
What about 11.1?
I'm so sorry.
We're up to it now.
Yeah, we're coming. We're good. Yeah, sorry. I've got them in order here, Gray. So next is the 11s. Reports for noting. 2 reports listed in the section tonight. The first item is 11.1, increasing volunteerism in Latrobe City commencing on 4/6/2. Do I have a motion, councillors? Councillor Lund. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Gibson. Do I have any opposition? Councillor Clancy. Councillor Lund. Would you like to speak to this one? Okay. Councillor Gibson. To speak or reserve? That's a big word.
Jeez, we're playing a deck of cards now.
You want to hear what I have to say first? Look, my opposition is the recommendation from the officers is that we receive and note the attached report. You can't have much opposition to that, but what I do have opposition with is the report itself. And look, I know that this, I believe this came from a notice of motion back in, was it September last year? That this came forward to us to have an idea of how our volunteerism was going. There's no doubt that volunteerism has dropped off and we need to do a little bit more in that area. I just wanted to point out, and I think this is not necessarily for the councillors to sway you to not support this, but really for the community to note that this report, where we talk about the volunteerism that is in Latrobe City, it generally only talks about the volunteerism in Latrobe City that are connected to Latrobe City assets and committees. It doesn't, and it isn't a representation of volunteerism across the wider city. The report talks about 29 committee councils that has 215 people in it, and there's a calculation there that generates near $700,000 worth of volunteer hours at $40 an hour is the way that's calculated on a Volunteer Victoria calculator. But what it doesn't do is it doesn't take into consideration all of the other hundreds and hundreds of other volunteer hours that are done across committees that aren't connected to council. And I do note, which is why it's such a soft opposition here, it would almost be impossible for us to get those numbers. For every football and netball club, for every CWA, for every CFA, for every other group that meet, I think that it is very hard. But in the interest of trying to have a push to have people come along and volunteer, I just wanted to make the point that people don't have to volunteer just through the committees of management or the Friends group or the Bush Reserves or the cultural diversity groups or the libraries or those sort of things. They can volunteer in every other way, and this report is only talking about volunteerism through a formal committee of council.
Thank you, Councillor Clancy. Any other councillor wish to speak? Councillor Harriman, then Councillor Law.
Yeah, I just want to reinforce, again, I'm very similar to Councillor Clancy on this. I think without having the thousands of volunteers we've got in other organisations across the city involved in the report, it leaves the report needing a little bit more. And I think it's important too, probably from a council point of view, to understand what COVID has done to the volunteer base in a lot of those community service groups, sporting groups, and community participation groups. It would be great, I think, to see how they've actually survived COVID. I'd love to see us reach out to those other groups, and it also gives us a basis too. When people come in and want to volunteer, not everybody wants to be on a Latrobe City Council committee. There's a lot that want to, you know, they want to be part of a, you know, Latrobe. I'm trying to think who they are. Latrobe City Neighbourhood Watch is one group that needs volunteers, and there's people that would be interested in that. And I think if we can reach out to a number of these groups, work out who's volunteering, how their numbers are going, but then have their contact details to pass on, it just gives us a lot more depth of what we can do, whether it be the local, as Councillor Clancy said, the local palliative care group, the local Rotary group, the local, you know, local football or netball club, junior soccer club. It just gives us a greater option to see who's out there and to direct people their way, but also get feedback from them on what they need. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Harriman. Councillors, any further speeches? Councillor Law, I'm so sorry, you did indicate you
No,
wanted to
that's
speak.
fine. Madam Mayor, I think it's just a little bit of a cry for help from some of our volunteer organisations that run our reserves and what have you. I think all they need is a little bit of help to help them try and just get a few more people involved, because at the end of the day, if they fall over, then the cost burden of that group comes back onto Latrobe City. So if we can help facilitate the longevity of all our reserve committees through a little bit of communications and help in a general way, I think it's a great outcome, which will flow on to all the other organisations that are out there as well. So I think it's just a little bit of a cry for help to try and get a little bit of comms, because we've got to remember a lot of these groups aren't tech savvy. They're there with their hands trying to get things done, and they just need a little bit of, you know, even just doing acquittals and things like that, it's just a little bit more difficult, and they just need a little bit of help to try and make it all happen so that they can function for a lot longer, which we need them to do. Thank you.
Councillors, anyone else wish to speak? Councillor Howe?
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I'm
after
just going to briefly touch on items number point 6 on the executive summary of the proposed promotion of volunteering through a Volunteers Expo. We're going to run the expo. It's going to be on May the 27th, and it's going to be held at the front of our Latrobe City Library and GPAC in Traralgon. This is exciting. It's an opportunity for all our volunteer groups to present what they do and try and get some volunteers along the way. Gives our community, people that have moved here recently or have dropped away in COVID, they give an opportunity to go along, have a chat to who they may be interested in, and perhaps join those clubs. So if you are interested in that, anybody or any groups out there, we'll be advertising through the LV Express, or it'll be on Facebook, or you can contact one of your councillors and we can put you on to the right way to register it. So very exciting, Madam Mayor, 27th of May. Thank you.
Share your enthusiasm. Thank you so much, Councillor Howard. Appreciate that. Councillor Middlemis.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm overwhelmed by the enthusiasm at this late hour. Can I suggest, councillors, that taking the point that Councillor Clancy started, that there's some opportunity there for a resolution at the next meeting to seek a wider knowledge of the volunteers in our society. And you're right, for every club there's a couple of volunteers running it, so you know there's a myriad of people out there. Something for us to think about. I think we do need to get a bigger picture, and we do need to work very actively at encouraging volunteerism, and what my enthusiastic friend just outlined is a start. Thank you.
I did. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Now, a question before I start. So, I've got to be careful because it was close. I did ask a question when this may have come up. I asked a question, was this just closed for council committees? And if I remember correctly, that no, it wasn't just ours. Did I remember correctly? Yep.
Sorry, I can't remember the exact question, Councillor Gibson, that you previously asked. So,
right,
can you
what
just
I
clarify
asked
for me?
when it came up is this just for Latrobe City Council
Oh,
and
sorry,
the volunteering?
in terms of what's
committees
detailed in the
and
report, in relation to a volunteering expo and a communications plan to highlight volunteering opportunities. So I think that's broader than just our committees. Yes, I'm getting a nod from my team in the background, so just want to clarify that. So thank you. Yes, it is.
No worries. Okay, we can go again. All right, that being the point. It's all right. Don't worry about it. Okay, that being the points, the issues that have been brought up actually should be addressed, because it's not just for our committees, because they're right. There are so many more clubs and committees out there that are doing it really hard and difficult, and to just give them that little bit of help and highlighting to the people out there who we hope are going to be there in droves on the 27th of May, right? Sorry, 27th of May, got that one? For the Volunteering Expo, so they can see. So hopefully out of all of this, because my fellow councillor's right, we need to give them a little bit of TLC, because the numbers did drop during COVID. Some of the people who just kept on being there week in, week out, and it's not mine.
We know who's shouting at the
oh, God blimey. So, oh, for crying out loud. Yeah. Forget it. Just support it.
Thank you, Councillor Gibson. Right, Councillor Gibson was reserving. We did have opposition, which means Councillor Lund, you actually get to close.
Thank you. I have got a couple of things to say. First, I want to acknowledge and extend my thanks to the officers that put all the work in to produce this report. I know that it was on the back of a notice of motion. That may have been why we were limited in our parameters of what we gathered, but I also take note that it will be a massive job to capture all the data of volunteerism across this wonderful city of ours. So, and I'm not sure that we actually need to do that, but today we are here to receive and note the report, so I would encourage my colleagues to do that. And I would like to take the opportunity to again reiterate that on the 27th of May we'll be having a volunteer expo, so it would be wonderful for all our community organisations across Latrobe to get involved with that. But it's also an opportunity not only to explore what opportunities there are in volunteering in our city, but also explore as service agencies and community agencies how we might be able to welcome volunteers and embrace them and be a bit more inclusive and provide diverse opportunities. So that is also on us. So it's, to me, that's a bigger picture thinking opportunity for this event as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lund. Councillors, we're going to put the motion to the vote. Those in favour, Councillor Clancy. Councillor Gibson, Councillor Harriman, oh, it's getting late. Councillor Howe, Councillor Lund. Councillor Law, Councillor Middlemiss and myself. It is carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. Councillors, we don't have any questions. Stop it! You do realise Zaid is never going to come back to our meetings ever again. Item 12, there are no questions on notice. We do not have notices of motion. We don't have items for tabling at 14, and we do have the opportunity for acknowledgements. Acknowledgements are outlined in our governance rule. This is a section of the agenda where councillors can acknowledge or formally recognise or pay respects to achievements or individuals, groups, or the passing of a person closely associated with council or the community at a council meeting. I invite councillors to raise any formal acknowledgements, and on that basis, I'm going to go first. I would like to acknowledge Alan Matheson, a dearly loved teacher in the local area, much adored family member who passed earlier, let's say earlier this month. It wasn't earlier this month, it was in February. Following our last meeting though, so we didn't get to acknowledge him there. Many will remember Matho as one of our favourite teachers. I certainly did, from Collins Street Primary. He was a champion of rounders, and we thought that rounders was, you know, a world championship sport. Turns out he was an awesome cricketer, and that was a way that he got to go out and belt the ball around during the rest of the day. So if we got all of our work done up until lunchtime, then we could play rounders all afternoon, which suited kids like me just fine. So many a community tribute to Mr. Matheson, and he will be dearly missed by his family, friends, and all the kids that play rounders and his cricket mates as well. Councillor Gibson.
Yes, I actually do have an acknowledgement to make. Now, yesterday, as we know, it was Clean Up Australia Day, or what we were doing around the valley. We did it yesterday. Now, it was in many different spots yesterday, and I'd like to do a broad one for the whole, for everybody who actually got out of bed on a Sunday morning and went and did that, and our officers who went and did it on, what day? Thursday. So I'd like to acknowledge that, and I had the great opportunity to do it with some little Joeys. So, you know, these are little tackers that are only 5 years old or around that age, and they were out rolling the sleeves up and picking up rubbish. And I think the First Newborough Joeys need to be acknowledged. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Councillor Gibson, and thanks to all the community groups involved in Clean Up Australia Day. Councillors, anything further in relation to that? If there aren't any others, I just wanted to acknowledge the volunteers of the Ballara Folk Festival. Just to congratulate them on an absolutely huge event yesterday, and also to thank the Light of Hidayah Mosque for hosting Councillor Lund and I. This weekend there's been some wonderful community events that have been happening, and we're enjoying them immensely. Okay, we'll continue to move through. Next is item 16 on the meeting agenda. This is meeting closed to the public to consider confidential items. Can I have a mover? Councillor Gibson. A seconder? Councillor Middlemiss, who tried to raise his hand and dropped his pen. I take it there is no opposition. There wouldn't want to be this late, and there you go. We'll consider that one carried unanimously, and we will consider that at 9:50 p.m. This is the point in time where we draw our public part of the meeting to a close, our live stream. For those members who joined us tonight in the room, they have all now left. But thank you to those members of our community who attended and conducted themselves with a level of consideration for what was a very long meeting with some interesting elements to it. We will close off for confidential business, but I just wanted to, at this point, extend my thanks to our officers who've done a power of work tonight, and much of it above and beyond what they would be required to do. And also thank those who came to speak to us on some quite difficult matters, never easy conversations to have, but also to my council colleagues for your patience this evening, and thank you for the way you've conducted yourselves within this meeting also. Good night, everyone. We will see you at our next meeting, and yeah, take care. Good night.